It all starts with the prota waking up startled in a hospital bed. The doctor asks if he can hear him and if he remembers his name or the accident, but in the young man's mind, he is just an ordinary graduate student. He remembers there was a fire in the lab and that he ended up passing out while trying to save the hard drive containing his academic research. Looking around, he tries to confirm if he really is in a hospital room. Suddenly, he notices something very strange. He is completely shocked to see that the reflection in the vase is not his own. From the few memories that surfaced during his 2 days in the hospital, he begins to connect the dots about what happened. The young man comes to the unbelievable conclusion that he ended up reincarnating in someone else's body. The original owner of the body is named Kim Yoo-sung, a Korean boy living in Japan who was studying for his high school entrance exams. The original Yoo-sung ended up in a severe car accident over the weekend and spent several days unconscious in the hospital. The prota realizes his old self passed away in the lab fire and that his soul has now possessed this student's body. At that, he starts celebrating, thinking he is finally free from the absolute nightmare that was his life in graduate school, but he quickly tries to keep his cool, thinking he shouldn't jump to conclusions because this possession might suddenly wear off. As the car approaches a building, he wonders how he will adapt and live in this new reality. Upon arriving home, Yoo-sung's mother affectionately tells him to go get some rest, and he politely agrees. He stops in front of a door and notices his body seems to move on its own, as if it already knows the way to Yoo-sung's room. Even though he finds it a bit strange and intrusive to enter a stranger's room, the young man slowly opens the door and asks for permission to enter. However, taking a quick glance inside, he stands completely frozen and in shock at what he sees. The prota comes face to face with several shelves packed with manga and book collections of every possible kind. He walks in a bit further and finds anime character posters plastered all over the walls in an exaggerated way. Looking around and seeing figurines and plushies scattered across the entire room, he realizes the former owner of the body was a fanatical otaku. The young man lets out a heavy sigh and wonders what he is going to do now in such a bizarre situation. He sits on the floor right in the middle of that room, full of giant collectible figurines and questions if he can actually live as Kim Yoo-sung. The young man worries because Yoo-sung's parents will get suspicious if his behavior changes, yet he knows absolutely nothing about that geek universe. While thinking of a solution, he looks at the bedroom mirror and notices a very specific poster hanging right next to it. He observes the image of a character on the poster who has the exact same haircut and the same red wristband that Yoo-sung is wearing. Suddenly, he backs away from the mirror in a panic as he realizes a terrifying detail about that poster. The prota recognizes the illustration and realizes that poster belongs to a very famous comic book series. He notices that Yoo-sung used to dress up like the character all the time and realizes the boy was truly an extreme-level otaku. The young man begins rummaging through the shelves for the other volumes to understand how Yoo-sung used to act on a daily basis. He picks up a book with an elf on the cover and finds that illustration extremely embarrassing and over the top. Looking closer at the cover of that book, a memory from his past begins to surface in his mind. He remembers a classic romance manga called Scramble Love, which was a massive sales phenomenon worldwide. The story perfectly followed the traditional romantic comedy formula and was highly praised for the author's unique art style. However, the ending of the series caused quite a controversy because the main character ended up choosing his childhood friend over the other girls. He recalls seeing a lot of people online complaining and arguing furiously over that unexpected manga ending. Seeing that Yoo-sung's book seemed to follow this exact same line, the young man decides to sit on the floor and start reading to check it out. As he flips through the pages, he finds himself completely engrossed in the reading and realizes he simply cannot stop. He spends the entire night awake devouring the volumes and admits that the story is actually highly entertaining. The next day, his mother walks into the family restaurant and asks him to take down orders if any customers arrive. He replies with a dramatic anime line and, though he finds it embarrassing, is relieved to see that his mother found it completely normal. The young man puts on the server's apron and thinks that being the son of a barbecue restaurant owner is perfect for his high-protein diet. At that moment, the door chime rings, announcing the arrival of customers, and he looks toward the entrance in surprise. A blonde young man walks in, accompanied by a girl who is holding onto his arm, and Yoo-sung feels like he has seen them somewhere before. The blonde girl says excitedly that she is going to treat him to food today to make sure he cannot escape from her at all. She calls the young man Ryuji in a very affectionate way, leaving the blonde boy visibly flustered by the situation. Hearing that incredibly familiar name, Yoo-sung's eyes widen, and he begins to suspect something completely unbelievable. He immediately recalls the details and the striking illustrations he saw in the hit manga Scramble Love. The prota is shocked to realize that the customer in front of him is none other than Sakamoto Ryuji himself from the story. He stands frozen, staring at the two teenagers in the middle of the restaurant, unable to believe what is happening right before his eyes. At that moment, Yu-sung realizes with absolute dread that he didn't just reincarnate, but ended up landing directly inside a book. He tries to recap the whole situation, remembering he was just an ordinary graduate student before the tragic lab fire. But the major twist is that the former owner of this body, Kim Yu-sung, was just an irrelevant extra in the Scramble Love manga. Basically, he is now a mere side character inhabiting the universe of a book he spent the entire night reading. Worst of all, he never read the original manga in its entirety, only knowing a few spoilers he happened to see online in the past. Even so, he tries to rationalize that, since it is a classic romantic comedy, the world is in no danger of coming to an end. He concludes that his sole mission to survive in peace is to stay as far away as possible from the story's main character, Sakamoto Ryuji. If he can keep his distance from the entire main plot, he can finally live a peaceful and normal life as a background character. From then on, the young man began studying hard to learn how to act like Yu-sung and enrolled in a school far away from his original neighborhood. He used his intelligence from his past life to become the top student at school and secure a full scholarship. After that, he even joined the student council and completely changed his old personality, using puberty as an excuse. But despite all the changes he made to his new routine, the possession of the boy's body was never undone. He accepts that he needs to adapt to this reality and begins to think of practical ways to prepare for an uncertain future. The young man tries to draw up plans to save money and invest in famous stocks, but realizes with frustration that he doesn't have enough funds yet. Determined to improve, he starts running on the treadmill daily, firmly believing that having physical strength and stamina is essential in life. While pushing himself through push-ups, he thinks that even in a romantic comedy world, it is always good to be physically prepared. He keeps pushing his limits with heavy weightlifting, giving it his all in every single repetition to strengthen his body. The young man discovers that working out is extremely satisfying and ends up becoming completely obsessed with gaining muscle mass. Time passes. Spring arrives with the cherry blossoms in full bloom, and Yu-sung's new school routine finally begins. He arrives at school with his backpack and checks the homeroom assignment board. At that moment, a classmate approaches excitedly and greets him, mentioning that he arrived quite early today. Actually, that guy standing there wasn't the main character, but rather this buff guy looking like Jotaro. His friend asks which classroom he is in, and Yu-sung replies that he doesn't know his room assignment yet. He walks calmly through the flower-filled courtyard and thinks that his first year in that world flew by. The prota now sports a much more mature and confident appearance, completely different from when he woke up in the hospital. He trained relentlessly and lifted heavy weights over the past few months to pack on a serious amount of muscle mass. The young man did all this on purpose to be able to protect himself from any physical danger that might arise in the future. After all, in that manga world, absurd things like aliens and ghosts could show up at any given moment. He clenches his fist with determination, repeating to himself that all that training was solely to guarantee his survival. He managed to get through his first school year unscathed by acting normal, so he decides he will keep doing the same moving forward. But right after, as he approaches the doorway of his second-year classroom, he hears someone shout Ryuji's name out loud. The person who comes running in all smiles is Yaguchi Maya, the main heroine of the original Scramble love story. The original main character, Sakamoto Ryuji, replies somewhat unenthusiastically that his day didn't start off very well. Seeing that scene, Yu-sung breaks into a cold sweat as he realizes that, by a cruel twist of fate, he ended up in the exact same classroom as the main character. He bitterly regrets choosing a school so far from home for nothing, since his plans for a peaceful life just went down the drain. While Yu-sung watches from afar, Ryuji begins complaining to Maya about losing his wallet first thing in the morning. The blonde boy also mentions that he ended up bumping into an unfamiliar girl on his way, which instantly puts Yu-sung on high alert. Suddenly, the teacher enters the classroom, telling everyone to quiet down and quickly return to their respective seats. The teacher asks for everyone's attention and says that, even though it is the first day of class and everything is a bit chaotic, they need to settle down. As the class begins to whisper out of curiosity, the teacher announces that he has a very important notice to share with the students. He flashes a big smile and enthusiastically announces that their class has received a new transfer student today. The door opens, and the beautiful blonde girl who was at the restaurant with Ryuji steps into the classroom, all smiles. All the boys begin praising her beauty, prompting the teacher to joke that they should pay that same amount of attention to the blackboard. The teacher asks everyone to be kind to her and tells the girl to take a step forward to introduce herself to the class. She cheerfully introduces herself as Kishimoto Rika, revealing that she moved from another city and that she loves cats, sweets, and taking naps. Observing the girl, Yusung thinks it was obvious that the new heroine would end up landing in the exact same classroom as the main character. He stands there deep in thought, staring at the situation, already predicting that the manga's plot is about to start unfolding right then and there. He remembers that Rika was an extremely popular character among readers, even without having read the original story in full. Even knowing she wasn't the final winner of the manga, he watches everything in silence while the teacher decides on her seating arrangement. Finally, the teacher points to the empty desk right next to Ryuji and orders the blonde boy to take good care of his new classmate. Ryuji stares at the girl in absolute shock upon realizing she is the exact same aggressive girl he had bumped into that morning. The blonde girl's eyes widen as well, and she lets out a startled gasp as she recognizes Ryuji immediately in the middle of the classroom. She points her finger right in his face and calls him a creep in front of everyone, recalling the embarrassing accident they had earlier. Ryuji gets angry at the accusation, but the teacher thinks it's great that they already know each other and tells the girl to just go sit down. Once and for all, Rika sits at the desk next to Ryuji and begins staring at him with an extremely irritated look full of suspicion. She turns her face away, huffing in anger to show that she wants no conversation with him at that moment. However, right after, she discreetly extends her hand and hands Ryuji's lost wallet back to him. Ryuji thanks her awkwardly. While Yusung watches everything from afar and begins desperately wishing to transfer schools, Yusung tries to stay focused, remembering that everything he has done so far was to guarantee a peaceful future without major twists. Even without having read the manga completely, he knows he can predict events using the standard logic of romantic comedies. He knows that things in manga never go as planned, which is why he always kept himself updated by reading the latest magazines. Reading these works was his strategy to familiarize himself with every possible cliché and pattern of this type of romance story. Suddenly, Ryuji stands up, holds Rika's hands, and asks if she can step out of the classroom with him for a moment. With a very serious expression on his face, the main character says he wants to talk about what happened between them that morning. Rika blushes a bit and gets flustered, but ends up accepting the invitation, saying she can listen to him for just 1 minute. The two exit together under the watchful eyes of Yusung, who begins to suspect that something major is about to happen. Decided not to miss this event, Yusung stands up from his desk and makes up a random excuse that he needs to use the restroom. He sneaks out the door, exuding a dark and intimidating aura that catches the attention of all the students around. As he walks down the hallway, the other students are scared to death of him and begin spreading absurd rumors that he is an assassin. Yusung gets annoyed by these mobster rumors, but admits that his intimidating presence helps a lot when it comes to going unnoticed. He decides to hurry up to spy on the couple, confident that he has studied clichés enough to know exactly where they will meet. The young man knows that for his predictions to work, he needs to see these romantic events up close to gather information. He begins to reflect on the school's layout, knowing there is only one perfect place for a couple to talk in private. He focuses his gaze with absolute certainty, knowing there is only one classic spot for this type of private conversation to take place. Wasting no time, the young man heads toward the area located right behind the school's main building. Back there, Ryuji brings his hands together and bows deeply before Rika, offering a sincere apology for the morning's misunderstanding. Hidden in the middle of the bushes, Yusung watches the scene and instantly recognizes that classic apology pose. He is baffled to see Ryuji striking that dramatic pose, thinking it was exactly what was expected of a main character. Rika just watches the boy bowing in front of her with her arms crossed and a serious expression on her face. But right after, the girl can't help herself and starts bursting into laughter at the boy's worried face. She flashes a mischievous smile and says in a friendly tone that he is much more innocent and silly than she imagined. Ryuji gets confused and asks if she wasn't angry, and she replies that she isn't petty enough to hold a grudge over an accident. She confesses she only acted that way because she found his shocked face hilarious, leaving Ryuji quite irritated. Yusung analyzes the girl from afar, remembering that this cheerful and playful personality made her the audience's favorite character. The young man watches intently from between the leaves, aware that he is witnessing the very first romance event between the main couple. But while admiring that perfect cliché happening, he suddenly feels a familiar presence quietly approaching from behind. The young man gets a massive fright when someone suddenly calls his name right behind him, interrupting his spying. A female voice asks suspiciously what the future student council secretary is doing crouching down in the bushes over there. A beautiful girl with a red fan over her face asks if he is doing something shameful, like peeping at the schoolgirls. Her name is Sayonji Kumiko, the student council president who comes from a noble and influential family, acting as the classic villainess. Even though she is a side character and a rival in the original manga, Yusung knows he needs to prevent her from getting involved with the main character. To cover it up, Yusung makes up a story that he was just analyzing a tree branch to decorate the student council room. Kumiko hides her face behind her fan and says she finds it a bit strange to put something like that in the council room. The young man just stares at her in silence with a calm expression, waiting to see what the girl's reaction will be. Kumiko blushes slightly and, to Yusung's surprise, decides to accept the branch, saying she will place it in the meeting room. Yusung thanks her politely, but is very surprised to see that his flimsy excuse actually worked on her. She changes the subject and asks what brought him there. Mentioning she thought he would be too busy with the start of classes, Kumiko reveals that she would like to have lunch with the council members to bond better and decided to invite Yusung personally. She turns around all excited, calling the young man to head to the cafeteria right away before all the seats are fully taken. Yusung follows her in silence, but thinks to himself that there is nothing in that simple cafeteria to please her refined palate. Kumiko lets out a sarcastic laugh and tells the young man that he clearly doesn't truly know her to say something like that. She asks, in a dramatic fashion, if he is implying that she doesn't understand the culture and diet of ordinary people. The girl claims she loves eating simple dishes and recalls that she even ate a pork rice bowl the last time Yusung stares at her suspiciously, thinking she only eats premium meat in the council room and that this talk is pure pretense. He decides to break the mood and calmly informs her that the school cafeteria does not serve that specific type of pork dish. Kumiko looks surprised and asks what the cafeteria serves then, and Yusung replies that they have a very similar option called gyudon. Upon hearing the name, she finds the term extremely vulgar and bizarre, complaining that the dish has a very ugly sound to it. Kumiko begins to shudder with disgust and panics at the thought of actually having to eat a dish with such a strange name. Yusung just watches her with a bored expression, remembering she had just bragged about perfectly understanding common food. Suddenly, a guy with glasses named Akaki Shinjiro appears, saying he was looking all over for Kumiko Shinjiro, notices the presence of the buff young man, and straight up asks if he is Kim Yusung from the student council. The vice president adjusts his glasses with a suspicious look, seemingly drawing his own conclusions about what he is seeing there. He points his finger at Yusung and starts shouting, asking if he realizes that he is a part of the school's student council. Shinjiro complains that Kumiko even skipped lunch to go look for him, which leaves the president completely red with embarrassment. Yusung is confused by the dramatic scene, not understanding why the girl would do something like that just to find him. Kumiko gets angry at Shinjiro's outburst and furiously denies that she was sad or worried about the secretary's absence. Shinjiro insists he will not tolerate anyone treating the president insolently while she tries to make him shut his mouth. The young man gives a dramatic speech of loyalty, but Kumiko drags him away in a hurry, saying their food is going to end up getting cold. She says goodbye to Yusung, letting him know they will have lunch another time, while Shinjiro keeps making threats against the young man from afar. Yusung is left standing alone with a massive bored face, completely unable to understand absolutely anything that just happened there. Later, after class is ended, the flow of people begins to fill the stairs leading down to the subway station. Yusung catches everyone's attention at the station due to his extremely strong body and his enviable physique. He reflects that the real story of Scramble Love must be starting exactly today, with the main character's big encounter. He thinks that, thanks to his workouts, everyone at school avoids him like the plague, which is great for staying out of Ryuji's plot. He flashes a confident smile and celebrates having focused so much on his bodybuilding workouts, seeing that size really does make a difference. Looking at the subway schedule board, he lets out a sigh of disappointment upon seeing that there are still 18 minutes left before the next train arrives. While opening a can of juice, he repeats to himself that he just needs to focus on living a normal extra life far away from trouble. He smiles victoriously, thinking everything is going exactly as planned, when suddenly he feels someone tug lightly on his sleeve. To his absolute despair, the person who appears there is the new transfer student, Rika, who greets him in an extremely energetic and smiling manner. Yusung goes into a total panic upon encountering her there and wonders what that important girl is doing. Crossing his path, the blonde girl says, all happy with her phone in her hands, that she was lost and is very glad to have run into him so quickly. Rika shows her phone to the young man and asks politely if he happens to know how to get to the address on the screen. Yusung knows the way, but gets very suspicious and wonders how on earth she knows his name all of a sudden. She notices the confusion on the young man's face and quickly points her finger toward Yusung's uniform with a victorious smile. Rika smiles cheerfully and says, his name is written very clearly on the identification badge of his school uniform. The young man realizes his mistake and notes that he had completely forgotten the obvious detail that he was wearing his student badge. The blonde girl smiles affectionately and says she was absolutely certain that he was a very good person. From the very first moment, Yusung is a bit surprised and thoughtful at the kind words and the sudden massive compliment he just received from the young woman. He gets very confused and starts sweating from nervousness, unable to understand the reason why the girl is drawing so many conclusions about him. He straight up asks what she meant by that and how she managed to remember him on their very first day of school. Rika laughs and says he was exalting a very strange and intimidating energy in the classroom, making it impossible for anyone not to notice his presence. She mentions she heard rumors that he once took on 50 bikers by himself and that even the baseball coach tried to recruit him. She cheerfully concludes that, seeing him treat the most popular girl in class with such ease, she realized he really is a good boy. Yusung remains in absolute silence observing the girl and realizes with dread the massive misconception she just formed about his image. He realizes, in despair, that she misunderstood everything and that he ended up getting involved with one of the most important heroines in the story. He understands why she is so popular, but questions whether he should use the scary rumors to try to scare her away from him. Rika shouts his name out loud, startling the young man, and causing him to finally snap out of his deep thoughts. The blonde pouts angrily because he stayed silent after her compliment, and he quickly tries to apologize for the distraction. She crosses her arms and asks what his answer is, and Yusung, not knowing what to say, just thanks her awkwardly for her compliment. The girl smiles understandingly and says with absolute certainty that even if the other students misjudge him, everyone will soon see who he really is. Rika smiles and says that all the scary rumors about him are just nonsense and that, beneath that tough appearance, he is very kind. She flashes a radiant smile and says she wants to be his friend starting today, asking that they take good care of each other. Yusung stares at her in silence and realizes with disappointment that his attempt to scare her off with that unfriendly face was a total failure. He accepts that, with a personality as persistent as Rika's, it would be impossible to avoid contact with her since they are in the same class. To maintain his disguise as an ordinary student, he decides to agree and says with a scary face that he will also count on her friendship. Seeing that his plan to go along with it worked, Yusung feels a bit more relieved to be able to keep things under control with the girl. Rika then remembers what she actually wanted and asks if he knows how to get to the address of her new house near Seijo Station. She confesses that the subway lines are very confusing, and Yusung takes her phone to analyze the map of the area calmly. He notices that the address is located in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the city, discovering that the blonde girl also has a wealthy family background. The young man explains that her house is on the same route as his, and that they will take the same train. Leaving the girl extremely enthusiastic, Yusung mentions that he lives at Chito's Funabashi Station, which is located just 2 stops away from Rika's new neighborhood. Rika is surprised by the massive coincidence and cheerfully comments that their houses being so close must be the work of fate itself. Yusung pretends to agree, but internally he begins to hatch a very clever plan to take advantage of that unexpected situation. He remembers that, although he prepared a lot, his biggest problem is the fact that he never read the original story of Scramble Love in its entirety. He realizes that the best strategy is to become friends with Rika to get direct and precise information about the events of the original manga. The young man plans to act behind the scenes to help the main characters, using her information to ensure that the course of the story doesn't change. He smiles confidently, knowing that this minor interference to help the two shouldn't alter the core events of the plot at all. To start building this alliance, he asks politely if she wants something to drink and offers to buy her a beverage. He says it's a welcoming gift for their new friendship, and Rika happily accepts, asking for a can of cola, wasting no time. The girl grabs the ice-cold can from the vending machine and starts chugging the soda all at once with great gusto. She lets out a sigh of extreme satisfaction and cheerfully comments that there simply is nothing better in the world than a good soda. Yusung notices her enthusiasm and asks if she likes soda that much, and she explains that she was on a strict diet. He gets confused by the diet comment and focuses his eyes directly on her to try to understand the reason for so much effort. Quite proudly, Rika takes out her phone and shows the young man a very elegant photo shoot picture she did in the past. She reveals that she used to work as a fashion magazine model in her old city, and that taking care of one's appearance is mandatory in that profession. Yusung jokes, saying she looks like a different person in the photo, and asks if it's because of the makeup, leaving the girl quite indignant. The train arrives at the platform, and he takes the opportunity to quickly change the subject and step into the car, leaving the blonde complaining about his escape. The green train closes its doors with a chime and begins to accelerate rapidly along the tracks toward their destination. Inside the car, the relaxed mood vanishes from the scene as some students look fearfully at Yusung from a distance and whisper in fear. They warn each other not to make eye contact, while Yusung and Rika travel peacefully in the middle of that packed car. Rika comments excitedly that it was great taking the subway with him to learn the way, but Yusung feels as though his route has been hijacked. He decides to focus on the station route map to try to truly help her find her way back home without getting lost. He points out the right direction and tells her to head forward, but Rika complains that he walks way too fast for her to keep up. When the train doors open, Yusung steps into the car, leaving the girl desperate, thinking he was going to abandon her on the platform. Upon arriving at Chitose Funabashi Station, Yusung says goodbye, letting her know he is getting off there, and Rika thanks him immensely for his help today. As the automatic doors slowly close, the girl waves goodbye smiling and says she will count on his help tomorrow as well. The train quickly departs from the platform, and the young man stands watching the car disappear into the tunnel while processing the girl's words. He stands there completely unresponsive, wondering if she really meant that the two of them are going to meet up every single day. The next day, during the school lunch hour, students begin running excitedly toward the cafeteria to secure their lunch. Meanwhile, Yusung walks to the school's outdoor area and sits alone on a wooden bench near the parking lot. He opens his wooden lunchbox and reveals that he brought a beautifully arranged portion of homemade kimbap to eat for his lunch. The young man picks up one of the delicious rolls with his chopsticks and prepares to savor his meal peacefully under the shade, but his peace is short-lived, as Rika suddenly appears and stares at him with an extremely dramatic and worried crying expression. She runs up to him with tears in her eyes, asking sadly if he usually eats alone in that isolated spot every day. Yusung calmly explains that he prefers to eat outside to prevent his classmates from feeling uncomfortable around his intimidating presence. He tells her not to worry and reminds her that she herself said people would eventually see who he really is over time. The young man says he just needs to wait patiently, leaving the girl deeply moved and blushing at her friend's mature attitude. She wipes away her tears, notices the lunchbox, and asks curiously if that is kimbap. Commenting that she only knew the dish from Korean dramas, Yusung offers her a roll to try, but is startled by the unbelievable speed with which she switches from crying to pure joy. She flashes a mischievous smile and cheerfully proposes that from that day forward, the two of them start having lunch together out there every day. Rika pouts and denies, blushing furiously, that she is asking to have lunch together just because of the delicious kimbap. Yusung reflects that he has gotten quite close to her and admits that the blonde's contagious energy justifies her massive popularity. She savors the food with sparkling eyes and asks if his family really owns a traditional Korean food restaurant. The young man plays it down, saying it's just simple food, but thanks her for the compliment, and Rika asks him to pass along her regards to his mother. Very sweet. The young woman offers a piece of rolled Japanese omelet from her own lunchbox in exchange for another piece of kimbap. Yusung looks at Rika's decorated little lunchbox and decides to accept the trade, taking a piece of that Japanese omelet to try. He calmly puts the food into his mouth and begins to chew, expecting to savor a traditional and very tasty Japanese dish. However, upon biting into the omelet, the young man's eyes widen in dread, and he goes into complete shock at the bizarre taste of that food. The dish is so sweet that he wonders in horror if the girl dumped an entire container of pure sugar when seasoning the omelet. He asks, astonished, how much sugar she put in there, and Rika replies innocently that she only put the amount she felt was necessary. Yusung gets fired up and warns that eating that much sugar is bad for one's health, promising to make a healthy, sugar-free Korean version for her next time. Rika asks what he usually puts in the omelet, and upon hearing that he only uses salt, finds that savory combination very bizarre. She laughs, saying he has rather peculiar culinary tastes, while he thinks to himself that the girl's palate is the one that's ruined. Suddenly, a loud, sharp whistle sound cuts through the air, abruptly interrupting their relaxed conversation in the parking lot. Yusung looks confusedly toward the sound of the whistle and spots the student council president from afar, accompanied by her loyal sidekick Kumiko, is red with anger, blowing the whistle with all her might to catch the attention of the two students on the bench. Trembling with rage, she mutters that heaven might forgive certain things, but inappropriate relations between students are completely unacceptable. She points her red binder in an authoritative manner and shouts that, as student council president, she cannot allow that behavior. Yusung is left with a massive, puzzled expression, completely unable to understand what could possibly be inappropriate about two people eating lunchboxes together. Kumiko walks up to them, saying that a boy and a girl hiding away to have lunch in an isolated corner is indeed a very suspicious relationship. Shinjiro steps forward, imposing himself, and accuses the young man of trying to make up flimsy excuses after being caught red-handed. Yusung calmly denies it and comments that the two of them seem to have a strange habit of popping up out of nowhere in front of him lately. Shinjiro fires back, saying it's only natural they cross paths since they are part of the student council, but Kumiko notices the blonde girl next to the young man. Kumiko hides half her face behind her fan and bashfully asks if he has any important explanation to give her. Rika suddenly points her chopstick in her direction and cheerfully says she finally remembered who she is. Calling her the gloomy president, the student council president, is left completely speechless and stammers, shocked by that very bizarre nickname she just received. The blonde explains, laughing, that there are rumors she always walks around alone in that black uniform, and that now she well understands the reason for the name. Kumiko gets furious at the comment and shouts, red with embarrassment, that the black uniform serves to command respect and the dignity of the council. Rika says, with all the casualness in the world, that everyone at school thinks she is cosplaying and that she should just accept the fact. Kumiko falls into despair upon discovering that students mock her behind her back, while Rika tries to console her by offering a piece of egg roll, crying from humiliation. The president shouts that she will let it slide just for today, but swears with a pointing finger that this insult will not go unpunished. She runs off crying in shame behind her red fan, leaving Shinjiro frantic, not understanding where she is heading. The young man runs after her, shouting for his lady, leaving Yusung and Rika standing by the bench watching the bizarre scene without understanding a thing. Rika asks innocently what it was she did wrong, and Yusung honestly replies that he doesn't have the slightest clue about the reason either. Later, Rika calls out to him in a very playful tone while walking toward the young man who is standing in the hallway holding a piece of paper. She asks curiously why he hasn't gone home yet, since regular class hours ended quite some time ago. Yusung explains that he was looking over the school club flyer to decide whether to join one, since he now has more free time. The girl excitedly suggests that the two of them take a tour around the school this very day to check out and test some of these clubs up close. She says that visiting the clubs in person is much better than just standing there thinking, and Yusung silently agrees. The young man agrees with the idea and asks which club they should start their visit with. Leaving the girl enthusiastic about the tour, Yusung seriously warns that he plans to visit absolutely every single club in the school, leaving Rika shocked and confused by that decision. With an extremely focused and determined gaze, the young man reveals his true motive behind that marathon of visits. Exuding a scary purple aura, he says he wants to find the limit of his physical strength by testing his skills in the clubs. Their first stop is at the soccer club, where several students are already gathered on the field doing their daily drills. One of the players runs up and kicks the ball with considerable force toward the goal during a finishing practice session off the post. But the shot's aim is terrible, and the ball goes flying nowhere near the goal, leaving the team's goalkeeper quite disappointed with the play. The player complains irritably about not being able to hit the target, while a teammate mocks him, saying he missed 5 consecutive shots. They begin arguing in the middle of the field, trading barbs about who is the worst player while the other members try to practice in peace. At that moment, a gray-haired young man approaches arrogantly, saying that kicking the ball into the goal holds no secret whatsoever. An outside voice calls their attention, and the players turn around irritated by the intrusion, complaining about being addressed that way. Suddenly, a tall player wearing the number 10 jersey appears behind them, leaving the boys completely terrified. With a very stern look, he warns that the club also needs to use the field and orders the two to get out of there immediately. They gulp upon realizing that is Ryohei, the soccer club captain, and a third-year student scared to death. They offer an awkward apology and make sure to run away before the situation gets any worse. One of the club members thanks the captain for the help. Relieved that those troublemakers finally beat it, Ryohei then asks what he thought of this year's freshmen, but the young man replies that none of them caught his eye. The captain goes deep in thought, as he highly desires to win this year's national tournament, but knows the team lacks talent. He reflects that if they could recruit at least one truly strong freshman, the results would be entirely different. Meanwhile, the blonde-haired boy walks away irritated and grumbles in anger just thinking about the humiliation he went through. He suggests going back to settle the score, but his cowardly friend says he doesn't want to get into trouble under any circumstances. The blonde accuses him of being scared, but the friend warns that the captain is dangerous and kicks the ball at over 100 kilometers per hour. The blonde fires back, saying that what matters in a fight is experience, but is interrupted when he bumps shoulders with someone completely furious about being pushed mid-sentence. He turns around ready to scream at whoever it is. However, he freezes upon coming face-to-face with the massive and intimidating Yusung, who stares back at him without understanding a thing with a terrifying look. The main character calmly asks the boy to repeat what he just said. The two troublemakers begin to sweat from nervousness and instantly realize exactly who they just bumped into. In total panic, they run off screaming for the heir of the mad dog fist to save their own lives. Yusung and Rika are left standing in the middle of the path, completely unable to comprehend absolutely anything about the reason for that desperate flight. Some students who were watching it all whisper in admiration that the young man managed to defeat the troublemakers with just a glance. Rika scolds him, saying he shouldn't pick fights, but Yusung defends himself, explaining that he merely looked at them. The girl sighs and says that even his gaze is already a problem, making the young man realize that socializing will be no easy task. Back on the field, one of the soccer players notices a different movement nearby and gets quite curious. Rika suggests starting the visit with the soccer club, but Yusung's arrival leaves all the surrounding students terrified. The player wonders anxiously if the feared young man came to seek revenge, fearing that nobody will be able to stop him if he gets angry. Captain Ryohei tries to calm his teammate, saying he highly doubts the visit is for such a silly reason. The teammate insists that he is a problematic boy and that it would be impossible for someone like him to want to join the soccer club. Ryohei admits he has heard many bad rumors about him, but states that things become quite clear when seeing him up close. He thinks that someone with that absurd physique wouldn't waste time just picking fights with minor delinquents. The captain takes the initiative, approaches the main character, and says he has heard quite a lot about him around the school. He introduces himself as Ryohei, welcomes him, and directly asks what brought the young man to the soccer club today. Yusung calmly replies that he would like to try out for the team, and asks what the necessary procedure is. Up close, Ryohei is in shock to realize that even though the boy isn't that much taller, his presence makes him feel minuscule. He notices the immense muscles beneath the young man's clothes and is highly impressed by such an intimidating physique. Ryohei instantly imagines that if he can manage to recruit Yusung, the dream of conquering the national tournament will finally be possible. He stares intently at the main character and decides that he needs that monster on his soccer squad no matter what. Yusung finds the captain's silence and staring odd, prompting Ryohei to quickly apologize and begin explaining the admission tryout. He explains that the test consists of kicking the ball with full force toward the goal, having only one single chance to shoot. Positioned before the ball at the penalty mark, the main character repeats to himself that he must use all his strength in that kick. Knowing he has only one single opportunity, he decides to put in the maximum energy possible and give his absolute all on the shot. The young man activates his concentrated muscle power and readies his plant leg to apply the maximum potency he can generate. He exerts himself to the utmost, unleashing an absurd amount of accumulated physical strength in his leg to fire a destructive kick. He delivers a kick of unbelievable power, generating a gust of wind and a massive wave of purple energy around the ball. The ball is launched at an absurd speed, creating a thunderous impact that makes the wind blow hard across the field. The captain and the other players are left totally jaw-dropped, unable to even see the ball's rapid trajectory. Looking toward the goalpost, they notice that the goal net is completely empty and intact. After the devastating shot, Ryohei sweats in terror, unable to understand what just happened, and wonders in horror where the ball could have gone. However, he looks down at the ground and discovers that the soccer ball completely burst at the exact moment it was kicked. Seeing the damage, Yusung gives up on soccer and asks Rika what the other sports club options are nearby. He resolves to try the basketball club next, while the girl accompanies him, finding that journey of destruction amusing. The news quickly spreads across the school, and students begin to gossip about whether the feared young man plans to take down every club in the academy. In the hallway, students comment excitedly about the main character's marathon of visits and run so as not to miss the show. Yukika, the kendo club captain, hears the rumors and thinks to herself that the feared Yusung has finally started to make his move. Upon testing the basketball club, Yusung delivers a dunk so monstrous that it completely breaks the backboard, leaving everyone horrified. In the baseball club, the young man unleashes a violent hit that generates a massive impact and startles the players present on the field. When he drops by tennis, the force of his serve opens a hole in the court floor. Frightening the members who were watching the scene, Rika cheerfully crosses soccer, baseball, and tennis off her list, marking them with little hearts as completed. She celebrates all excited that they managed to pass yet another test on the first try while walking alongside the main character. The young man looks at the paper and calmly asks how many sports clubs are still left for them to visit on this day with a playful little smile on her face. The girl comments that she was already expecting that curiosity of his regarding the task list. She puts on a pair of glasses with an intellectual pose and says she will answer using all the detailed data she has gathered so far. She explains that, excluding ping pong, volleyball, and judo, which are not accepting tryouts today, there are still only 3 options left on the list. The first remaining option is the track and field club, which serves to help develop physical endurance and focus quite a bit. The second alternative is the swimming club, focused on improving cardiovascular capacity and full body strength in the water. Finally, she presents the kendo club, known for training personal discipline and the mental strength of its practitioners. Rika concludes her detailed explanation by reaffirming that these 3 are the only clubs available for tryouts on this day. She asks all proudly if her explanation was good, and Yusung thanks her awkwardly, saying she didn't need to push herself so hard. Rika then asks where they should go now and cheerfully offers to guide him to any of the chosen locations. Suddenly, the young man asks if she's ever worked as an actress in addition to modeling, leaving the young woman very blushed and surprised by the question. He explains that she simply seemed to have a knack for acting, but the girl stammers, not knowing quite how to explain the situation. She averts her gaze and shyly mutters that this is a bit of an embarrassing and complicated matter to talk about all of a sudden. Even embarrassed, she admits with red cheeks that she used to do something quite similar to acting in the past. Hearing that mysterious response, the main character's eyes widen, and he goes deep in thought over his friend's unexpected revelation. He begins to break into a cold sweat, imagining bizarre things. Thinking that the dark tone of the conversation might indicate some strange secret, he ponders that one of the heroines from the original game wouldn't have a bad past, but thinks it best to investigate before changing the story. Quickly changing the subject, the girl pulls him by the arm and reminds him that they still have 3 whole sports clubs to visit today. Seeing how flustered she got with the previous conversation, the main character decides it's best not to press that matter any further. He suggests starting the route with the kendo club, and the girl excitedly agrees, telling him to just follow her lead. Upon arriving at the location, the two run into a large group of students anxiously gossiping before the dojo entrance. As soon as the young man appears, panic takes over the crowd, which shouts warning everyone about the arrival of the feared main character. The students gossip in fear that he has already destroyed several clubs today and wonder if his plan is to take over the entire school. A female student with a microphone shakily confesses to her friend that she is too scared to manage to approach and interview him. Rika steps up imposingly and introduces herself as Yusung's manager, warning that any interview must be handled directly with her. A sound of firm footsteps echoes through the place, catching the attention of the main character, who senses a strong presence rapidly approaching. Yukika walks in imposingly and accuses the young man of using tryouts as a cheap excuse to terrorize the school's sports clubs. She draws her sword and seriously warns that his wave of destruction is going to end right here under the kendo club's supervision. The students shout in admiration upon seeing that the captain didn't back down for a single second before Yusung's intimidating presence. Without being fazed, he explains that he came merely out of interest in the club and politely asks her to show how the admission test works. The captain sports a challenging smile and comments that she likes people who display as much confidence as the young man presents. She positions her gear on her shoulder quite firmly and announces that the rules for today's test are extremely simple. She warns that whoever lands the first clean strike wins, revealing that she herself will be his opponent and orders him into the dojo. A student in the crowd thrills with excitement upon seeing that the epic confrontation between that human weapon and the captain is finally about to begin. The fans shout, encouraging the senior to finish him off, while others comment that they never expected to see such a good show for free. Yusung gets a sweat drop on his head upon realizing that all the students in the school are treating him as if he were the big final villain there. Suddenly, the captain lets out an extremely loud shout, ordering absolute silence for everyone who is watching around. The entire audience shuts up at that exact instant, frightened by the authority and fury in the Kendo Club senior's voice. She seriously warns that this is an individual match between her and Yusung, forbidding the entry of any outside person into the dojo. With a threatening look, she swears that if anyone tries to trespass into the practice area, they will have to face her in combat first. Scared to death of angering the captain, the students retreat in absolute silence and decide to obey her orders without complaining. Rika whispers to the main character that captain seems to be much stronger than the other club leaders they saw before. Observing the opponent's intimidating stance, the young man silently agrees with the accurate comment made by his blonde friend Yusung, senses that the pressure emanating from Yukika is overwhelming. Realizing that the kendo club captain really is no joke, the main character asks Rika to wait outside the dojo, and the girl instantly agrees to avoid getting scolded by the captain. Yukika assumes her combat stance and asks with disdain if he is sure he won't need to use any protective armor. Yusung replies that he doubts they have armor his size, and the captain decides not to use hers either, so that the combat is fair. The main character accepts the challenge, but makes it clear that he will not hold himself responsible in case she ends up getting hurt during the clash. The captain finds humor in the warning and replies with mockery, saying that the young man says the funniest things she has ever heard. She coldly warns that he won't manage to even brush against her school uniform and tells him to prepare for the real fight. She charges with speed and delivers a swift strike, but the main character manages to block the attack with precision and ease. While trading quick strikes, she admits that, for an ordinary street troublemaker, the young man has pretty decent combat skills. However, she adds that he is merely someone who trained a bit, which means nothing before a true martial artist with agile and accurate movements. She moves around him seeking to find an opening to finish the match once and for all. She delivers a heavy blow that sends Yusung's wooden sword flying far away, leaving the young man totally disarmed in the middle of the dojo. Confident in victory, the girl smiles and calls him a fool for falling so easily for a simple sword disarming trick. Wasting no time, she charges with all her speed to deliver the decisive mercy blow and conclude the combat right there. In an unbelievable manner, Yusung simply extends his hand backward and catches his sword falling through the air, without needing to look at it. He holds the weapon firmly in the air and counterattacks, forcing the captain to quickly retreat to escape that sudden blow. Out of breath and startled, she positions herself again while trying to comprehend the absurd pressure that began to emanate from the main character. She realizes that if she had taken a single second longer to dodge that counterattack of his, things would have ended very badly. The young woman internally admits that she underestimated her opponent and knows that prolonging the fight will only bring serious trouble and disadvantages for her. She decides to focus all her spiritual energy and promises herself that she will conclude the match once and for all on the next move. She charges, screaming that this is the end, and activates her clan's secret technique, advancing with a devastating force against him. A great clash flash takes over the scene as the secret technique collides directly against the main character in the middle of the dojo. However, the one who ends up being violently struck is the captain herself, who lets out a groan of pain upon receiving his counterattack. She cannot understand how he was able to resist and shatter the Fuma clan's secret technique, something nobody has ever managed to do. The girl recalls her own arrogance moments before, when she was absolutely certain she would win the combat with ease. But all that confident posture goes down the drain when she is struck full on and thrown far away with extreme violence. While falling backward, she wonders, totally dazed, what exactly hit her with so much potency and aggressiveness in the fight. The captain reflects amidst the fall that she felt no murderous intent coming from him, which makes the whole situation even more bizarre. She then notices something strange upon looking at her own hand and lets out a sound of surprise, noting the state of her equipment. Yukika is left in complete shock at the sudden discovery and begins to fear what truly happened in that final instant. Meanwhile, the main character deactivates the muscle reinforcement he used in the combat and thinks to himself about the technique's functionality. The next morning, the students of Classroom 2B comment, gossiping about the rumors that Yusung defeated every sports club yesterday. One of the girls whispers that the Kendo club got the worst of it and that Captain Yukika and other members ended up landing in the hospital. They whisper that he did all this to take over the school and wonder if the young man has now become the supreme leader of the entire academy. Hearing all that from his desk, the young man laments the gossip and admits he didn't imagine his strength would cause such a massive misunderstanding. Upon seeing Ryuji talking cheerfully, the main character is relieved to notice that the original guy from the story hasn't changed toward him at all. Rika arrives all smiling to give him a good morning, making the young man think that everyone should just keep living their own life in peace. Suddenly, a red-haired girl invades the classroom, pointing her finger and shouts furiously, ordering Ryuji to get out of there immediately. The students gossip in fear, trying to understand who she is, and soon discover that she is Karen, one of the Kendo club members. Quite confused and without understanding a thing, Ryuji politely asks who she is, and the reason for looking for him in that manner. Karen accuses him of having cowardly assaulted the club's freshmen, and says she visited them in the hospital, where they revealed the whole truth. Ryuji tries to defend himself, saying it's a misunderstanding, but the girl gets even more enraged while Yusung watches everything from afar. At that moment, Maya comes running in front of the two, asking for calm to explain what truly happened. Irritating Karen even further, Maya firmly reveals that the true culprits of the whole mess are precisely the Kendo Club's freshman students themselves. She reports that yesterday the freshmen dragged her by force into a dark alley, and that she was only saved because Ryuji stepped in to defend her. With a very serious look, Maya asks if, even knowing all that, she still has the nerve to put the blame for everything on Ryuji. She tells the redhead to go back and give the freshman a scolding, leaving Karen totally embarrassed upon realizing she made a terrible mistake. Maya confirms with crossed arms that the fault wasn't Ryuji's, but rather the first-year members of the club themselves who acted poorly. Upon realizing the colossal misunderstanding and that she blamed the wrong person, the redhead begins to blush intensely with shame before everyone. Instead of apologizing, she points at the young man and shouts all red with embarrassment, ordering him to become her boyfriend. From then on, Ryuji is left completely frozen and in shock upon hearing the girl declare out loud that she will make him the happiest man in the world. Maya is left with widened eyes, surrounded by question marks, unable to process the bizarre turn the conversation took. The other students in the room begin to whisper non-stop, while the redhead holds onto Ryuji's arm under the tense gaze of all their peers. Totally red with jealousy and anger, Maya shouts at the top of her lungs, saying that all of that is a lie and that it cannot be real. Yusung follows everything startled, thinking to himself how brutal the world of romantic comedies can be with these confessions. Meanwhile, Rika is left with blushed cheeks and lets out a little squeal of excitement upon witnessing that cinema-worthy romantic scene. She finds Karen extremely stylish for having so much attitude and courage to confess her feelings in such a direct and open way. In another corner of the room, a group of boys begins to gossip and debate about which of the girls Ryuji will end up choosing in the end. One of the boys bets that the sweet Maya is the best choice, praising the cuteness of his childhood friend and her slender body. Another boy disagrees and says that the best is the tough girl who scares others but turns into a docile puppy near the one she loves. Observing the chatter around him, the main character notices that the students remain highly excited, gossiping about the major gossip. He recalls the comical and dramatic scene of the redhead pointing her finger and ordering Ryuji to become her boyfriend in front of the whole class. He reflects that the girl had a lot of courage to say all that out loud, at the exact moment when everyone was watching Rika, then catches Yusung's attention with a question, and the young man turns around, confused, to listen to what his blonde friend has to tell him. She asks with a mischievous and curious look who he thinks Ryuji will end up dating after all that major mess. The main character honestly replies that he hasn't the slightest clue, causing the girl to complain in a playful tone that he is very boring. He thinks to himself that if the original story of the game is followed, Ryuji will end up married to his dear childhood friend. Maya Rika lets out a mysterious little laugh and claims full of herself that, in reality, she knows very well who will be the chosen one to date Ryuji, winking confidently. She says that in a contested relationship like this, Ryuji will surely end up choosing to date Karen. She says that this will happen as long as she herself is the one responsible for giving love advice to the redhead, leaving Yusung confused. He comments that she seems very confident about love advice, and the girl states with pride that she is an expert on the matter. Rika brags, saying that people line up to hear her wise advice, but the young man thinks that Ryuji wouldn't even manage to understand her. She grumbles, irritated that she knows very well how talented she is at this, while Yusung doesn't understand the reason for so much excitement on her part. Rika makes a cute face and requests in thought for the young man to pay that same attention to her, leaving the main character quite confused. He stammers, not knowing quite what to answer, feeling a bit embarrassed by the blonde's bright and focused gaze in his direction. Later, upon passing by the empty room, the young man spots the redhead Karen from afar, sitting with crossed arms on top of one of the desks. He asks a classmate what the redhead is doing in their room, and the friend reveals that she is insisting on meeting up with Ryuji on Saturday. The friend explains that she wants to treat the blonde to a meal as a way to offer a sincere apology for the previous misunderstanding. The main character comments that eating together on the weekend is basically a romantic date, and the classmate fully agrees with that. The friend approaches to tell a rumor in secret, revealing he heard it said that she is the daughter of a very powerful big shot in the region. He reveals, whispering, that they say around here that Karen is the daughter of the big boss of the famous and dangerous criminal organization. Duseikai Yusung asks, surprised, if this group is from the Yakuza, and the classmate confirms, saying they are one of the largest syndicates in the Kanto region. The main character reacts with total coldness, causing the friend to complain that he doesn't seem even a bit convinced by that scary story. Yusung explains that even if it's true, she didn't do anything against them, so nothing changes in the school routine of his daily life. Admired by so much courage and coldness, the classmate says it makes him want to call him boss, but the young man asks him to stop acting like that. However, the main character reflects that they are already in a manga world, so an absurd rumor like that can indeed be totally real. Suddenly, the redhead stands up and shouts out loud for the blonde, abruptly interrupting Yusung's thoughts about her life. She presses Ryuji about the date of their lunch to apologize, and the main character thinks that that is a problem solely for the blonde, not him. Upon seeing all that insistence from the redhead, Maya grinds her teeth from pure anger and jealousy. About to explode in the middle of the school hallway, Maya shouts telling her to stop, seeing that Ryuji is uncomfortable, but Karen furiously fires back, saying she has nothing to do with it. Some boys around cry with envy of Ryuji for having girls fighting over him, while the main character watches the bizarre scene. The next morning, school gossip continues to spread with great force through the academy hallways about the two girls. The students comment that, in the end, Maya and Karen had a true head-on confrontation over the blonde's love. They whisper that the redhead summoned Ryuji, saying he would surely have lunch with her on the weekend in any way possible. Ryuji appears with comical tears in his eyes, feeling cornered and mentally begging for help to get out of that predicament. In the cafeteria, Rika asks Yusung what his plans are to enjoy the upcoming long holiday of the famous Golden Week. The young man replies that he is just going to help at his family's restaurant, and the girl praises him with a smile, finding him an excellent son. Suddenly, the young woman asks if he would like to visit her at her house if he has free time, leaving the main character totally surprised. She explains that she has an immense amount of manga there, and the young man gets interested immediately, asking what the size of her collection is. Rika cheerfully reveals that her father's collection is so giant it would fill an entire bookstore, leaving the young man quite impressed. Yusung accepts the invitation and promises to call as soon as he can. While the girl tells him to let her know at any moment so she can speak with her father, Rika takes a bite of her rice ball with great satisfaction and begins to think thoughtfully about something she recently noticed about the young man. The main character comments that she is quite skinny but eats much more than she appears to, causing the girl to reply that that amount is her normal. She explains that she needs to have a good lunch so as not to keep snacking on junk food in the afternoon, and adds laughing that she doesn't gain weight easily by any means. With a very mischievous smile on her face, the girl reveals that everything she eats goes directly to her chest area, leaving her quite proud. Yusung is left completely disconcerted and red from the bold comment, repeating her words, not knowing quite how to react to that sentence. She feigns indignation with humor, calling him a pervert, while the prota realizes in horror that he fell right into a trap of hers. Suddenly, Rika lets out a shout of extreme surprise upon hearing the name of Tokyo being mentioned during the conversation with the redhead Karen there at the table. The blonde instantly notices that that is the perfect opportunity to put into practice her advice-giving skills and help her new classmate. She takes the initiative, calls the redhead's attention directly by name, and asks to confirm if she truly is Tojo Karen from the Kendo Club. The redhead stares at her confused, asking who she is, and the blonde introduces herself with all the friendliness in the world as being Kishimoto Rika. Rika says she noticed that she seems worried lately and offers to help, leaving Karen shocked upon recognizing the blonde's famous name, stammering in surprise. The redhead points her finger in her direction, unable to believe she is standing before that person, so well known in the school. Karen reveals, red with embarrassment, she heard it said that she is great with love advice, leaving Yusung shocked to discover that the rumor is real. She asks how the blonde knew about her problems, and Rika replies that it would be impossible not to notice, since she keeps going after Ryuji all the time. In a panic for fear that other people might overhear the conversation, the redhead runs to cover Rika's mouth and tell her to speak lower there in the cafeteria. Rika removes her hand with a gentle smile and comments that the timing was perfect, as she was also highly wanting to talk with her new friend. The redhead averts her gaze with blushed cheeks, shyly accepting the proposal to receive that much-needed help for her love troubles. While walking back home later, Yusung thinks to himself about how much Rika seems to be enjoying the whole situation very much. He recalls when the blonde scheduled a serious meeting with everyone after classes, leaving the young man worried about having been included in the meeting. He notes that the original story should focus on Ryuji's love dispute, but senses that Rika's excessive desire to help everyone seems strange. Deciding to stop overthinking the matter, the main character enters the fitness gym to focus solely on his heavy workout today. Upon entering the weightlifting area, he encounters the regulars of the place pushing their limits and letting out shouts of pure determination. The young man wonders why the place is so noisy today, when suddenly he hears a familiar female voice calling his name right behind. He turns around surprised and comments on the great coincidence of meeting there, unable to believe who is before his eyes. It is Captain Yukika, who is wearing very stylish casual workout clothes and stares at him with a quite serious and firm expression. He confirms surprised if that young woman dressed in training clothes truly is the kendo club captain he faced the previous day. She explains with disdain that merely the kendo club activities weren't enough for her training, though she didn't expect to run into him there either. The young man lets out an awkward little laugh and mentally comments that now he well understands the reason why all the men are so excited in the workout. She prepares to start the exercises, while the main character recognizes in thought that despite being tough, the captain is truly very beautiful. He comments that he didn't know she lived around that region, and the young woman replies with crossed arms that she just recently moved there. Hearing the conversation of the two up close, the energetic gym director pops up by surprise behind them, exclaiming that that is absolutely perfect. The muscular director, named Yujiro, smiles cheerfully and orders the main character to be the one responsible for showing the facilities to the newcomer. He says that since they are schoolmates, it will be much more comfortable to train together than with an old man, leaving the main character totally embarrassed. The director wickedly whispers in his ear that he thinks the girl enrolled there just because she likes him, wishing him good luck in the romance. The director walks away, telling her to just watch on the first day, leaving the young man sighing with the certainty that the man misunderstood everything. A thunderous sound echoes through the environment when an iron bar loaded with heavy weightlifting plates is positioned for the start of the workout. The director suggests starting light with 220 kilograms, frightening Yukika, who finds that initial load absurdly heavy and exaggerated. He asks her not to worry, stating he has been working with this for 20 years and that he has never seen a monster with as much physical strength as Yu-sung. The young man firmly grips the iron bar with both hands and tenses his muscular legs, concentrating all his potency to perform the lift. With a single precise movement and without making major effort, he raises that immense load from the floor, completing the squat exercise with perfection. The director praises the ease of the movement and decides to increase the weight to 270 kilograms, leaving the club captain even more horrified. The young man finishes the sequence peacefully, and the young woman is left jaw-dropped, noting that he completed 5 whole sets with that brutal weight. The director proudly reinforces that the boy is a true monster. While the young woman thinks that that type of heavy training is almost self-torture, she shakily recognizes that that absurd physique does not belong to an ordinary student and realizes that he is the legendary anomaly she heard rumors about. With eyes shining amidst the mystical energy that surrounds him, she concludes with absolute certainty that the young man possesses the legendary extreme yang physique. She focuses her serious gaze on him, totally convinced that that extraordinary bodily structure could only belong to a true warrior. She recalls that the legend says this mystical physical constitution, with the vitality of 100 men, belonged only to the great heroes of historical myths. She is certain of this because she faced him directly in combat and knows well that that colossal strength is not something one gets just by working out at the gym. Faced with such an important discovery about the young man, she decides that the best thing to do now is to report everything she discovered to that mysterious person. The next day, they arrive before a large and traditional Japanese mansion that belongs to Karen's family. Upon entering, several men in suits bow respectfully welcoming the young mistress Karen, confirming the gossip. Yu-sung goes deep in thought, seeing that her family truly is from the syndicate, and wonders why Rika doesn't seem even a bit surprised. He reflects that he will never get used to these bizarre zaris of the new world, when suddenly a man with a scar on his face stares at him, shocked. The man with the scar is totally frightened by the main character's intimidating physique, and wonders in horror what monster that is. He points his finger accusing Yu-sung of being an enemy spy and tells Karen to step away immediately for safety. Karen scolds him saying they came to help, but the henchman insists that that assassin face does not belong to an ordinary student. The chief of the henchmen lowers his head, sincerely apologizing for the rude and disrespectful behavior of his subordinates. There, Yu-sung calmly replies that it's all right and that he is quite used to being misinterpreted by people out there. He comments that he appreciates the invitation but doesn't think he will be of great help with romantic advice, but the blonde insists his opinion matters. Rika cheerfully announces that they will start by teaching the redhead how to cook, stating that a homemade meal is perfect for expressing feelings. She makes a cute pose with her hands and asks her friend to fully trust the infallible advice of Rika, the great expert in love. Yu-sung observes her with a massive sweat drop on his head, wondering to himself how she can say such embarrassing things about herself without feeling shame. Ignoring the young man, the two girls extend their hands excitedly and celebrate the official start of that fun cooking class in the kitchen. After some time and effort, the redhead finally finishes preparing the food and proudly presents her first arranged dish. She gets emotional holding her very first lunchbox made entirely by hand, while the blonde congratulates her clapping with joy. However, the process was a complete disaster minutes before, with the food burning totally because of the exaggerated high heat Karen used. Yusung relievedly thinks that the path up to there was extremely difficult and realizes how disastrous romantic comedy culinary can be smelling the pleasant scent. The young man admits he got hungry and offers to quickly prepare something very tasty for everyone's dinner. He puts on an apron with a lot of attitude, looks confidently at the girls, and tells them to leave the meal preparation entirely to him. The young man shows his incredible chef skills by preparing the food using high heat with mastery, surprising the girls at the location. Rika and Karen are left with widened eyes and totally marveled watching the spectacular kitchen technique the main character presents. He finishes preparing the dish with mastery and serves a fried rice of an irresistible golden appearance that looks extremely delicious. They take the first spoonful and begin eating very fast. Marveled by the spectacular and surprising flavor of that quick meal, Rika asks, surprised, since when he cooks so well, and he explains that he started practicing in his first year making his own lunchboxes. He recalls that in the beginning his mother would wake up at dawn to cook, and that he felt pity seeing the exhaustion on her face every day in the morning. He tells that he was clumsy at first, and Rika begins to cry, moved by his so affectionate attitude of helping his hard-working mother Karen, asks who makes Rika's lunchboxes, and the blonde replies all proudly that her mother makes everything with love. Drawing a laugh from Yusung, Rika suddenly slaps her hands on the table, exclaiming out loud that she finally remembered a crucial detail to help in the redhead's romance. She extends a gift package decorated with a pink bow and cheerfully reveals that she bought essential makeup products for her friend. She delivers the gift saying she wrote down a basic skincare routine, leaving the shy redhead very grateful and embarrassed. The blonde suggests going shopping for new clothes as soon as she learns how to put on makeup. Leaving the main character fearful of the shopping plan, Rika analyzes her new friend's clothing style and thoughtfully comments that the habitual look she uses at school is a bit outdated. She says bluntly that Karen's style looks like an old man's, shooting an arrow of pain and shock into the poor redhead's aesthetic pride. Yusung thinks the blonde is honest to a fault. While Karen accepts the reality check and promises to exert herself a lot to secure the date, Rika celebrates her determination and tells the main character to wait there in the kitchen, as the two are going to start the makeup session immediately. He complains about having to wait alone there at the table, but the blonde points her finger, stating that watching a woman's transformation is a crime. Rika pulls her friend excitedly toward the room, leaving the main character sitting alone at the table with crossed arms waiting patiently. He is left with a massive, puzzled face upon recalling that she had just said his masculine opinion would be essential for the plan. Later in the night, the two friends walk back home through the busy streets, and the girl cheerfully comments that the day was fun. She says, smiling, that she roots hard for Karen to manage to realize her great dream of having a perfect romantic date with Ryuji on Saturday. The main character asks to stop by a convenience store to buy a manga magazine, and the girl runs excitedly saying she wants to go too. She asks surprised if he also buys the magazine every week, and recalls that her father always says that whoever loves reading manga cannot be bad. Rika mockingly confirms she also buys it every week, causing the main character to ask ironically if that makes him a good person too. She stops for an instant, looks intently into his eyes, and replies in a very cute and sincere way that he surely is indeed a great person. She explains that he spent the entire day exerting himself in the kitchen to help with Karen's plan, and that whoever does that for others is amazing. With highly blushed cheeks and a beautiful shy smile on her face, the girl concludes her sentence by reaffirming with much affection that he is a good man. Completely embarrassed by the romantic atmosphere, she shouts that it's getting late, runs to the register to pay for the purchases, and leaves in a hurry. The main character watches her flee running and wonders with a massive, puzzled face if she just had a sudden stomachache out of nowhere. The next day, classes begin normally at the academy, and all students return to their rooms to kick off another week. The students begin to whisper through the hallways upon noticing something very unusual happening around there. A very beautiful red-haired girl passes by, catching everyone's attention, who comment on how cute she looks. Everyone is surprised upon realizing that that mysterious and charming girl is entering classroom 2B. With a firm and decided gesture, she extends a mysterious envelope sealed with dark wax. Karen hands the challenge letter to Sakamoto Ryuji and says they are going out together next weekend. Ryuji is left totally confused without recognizing her, leaving Karen irritated and with blushed cheeks. Sometime later, the scene shifts to the busy and famous neighborhood of Shibuya. Rika praises Karen's bold attitude at school, while the redhead shyly thanks her and asks to be called by her name. Rika cheerfully celebrates and suggests they use cute nicknames, while Yusung merely observes the two in silence. Upon entering the women's clothing section, Yusung feels as though he just stepped into a totally different world. He recalls that Karen asked for help to choose an outfit for the date, and Rika made sure to drag him along. Rika soon gets enchanted upon seeing a very cute set of clothes showcased in a chic store window display. The blonde holds Karen's hand and pulls her quickly inside, eager to make her try on several models. Rika begins stacking hangers on the redhead's arms, picking a bunch of pieces she finds pretty, without giving time for arguments. The blonde pushes Karen into the fitting room so that she puts on the first look. Karen complains that cute styles don't suit her, but Rika decides to enter the cabin to give a little help. Rika approaches to adjust the outfit on Karen's body, telling her to relax and leave everything in her hands. Hearing strange noises and complaints from Karen coming from inside there, Yusung feels totally embarrassed. Karen holds the skirt hem with trembling hands, feeling extremely embarrassed with the new look. She steps out of the fitting room wearing a very short skirt full of ruffles, leaving her completely uncomfortable. Rika asks her friend's opinion, and Yusung smiles, honestly praising that the outfit suited her a lot. The young man thinks to himself that the saying about clothes changing a person is indeed the absolute truth. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the imposing mansion of the Dongsung-ho, which is home to Karen's family. Inside the residence, the members of the mafia group are gathered around a large meeting table. Sitting there is the sixth president of the organization, Tojo Naoto. With an extremely serious expression, known by the feared nickname of Bloodbath, the leader begins to speak about Karen's recent steps. He drives a sharp knife with force into the table upon revealing that his daughter finally found a boy she likes. The henchmen are left in shock at the revelation, while the boss complains about not knowing who the bold kid is. He states irritated that he won't hand his dear daughter over to just anyone, and calls his assistant, Sento Naoto, asks to confirm if the name of the young man his daughter is interested in is indeed Sakamoto. The assistant confirms and adds that the young man is named Sakamoto Ryuji and studies at the same school as Karen. He reports that the previous day the young woman asked to go to a beauty salon and that he himself escorted her. Furthermore, he shows that new expenses appeared on her credit card at several shopping mall clothing stores. Piecing all the clues together, the assistant concludes that the girl is planning a romantic date on the weekend. The jealous father totally loses control and begins shouting in anger for Sakamoto's name across the entire room. Still trembling with rage, the leader orders all members who are free on the weekend to gather. He declares that the group's mission will be to follow the steps of the date and ensure that the boy doesn't try any funny business. All the men agree out loud and prepare to kick off this bizarre spying operation back with the main group. Everyone is now at a burger joint to rest and eat. Rika rests her head on the table and dramatically complains that she is completely exhausted after so much shopping. Though she says she has no strength to even chew, the blonde keeps eating French fries non-stop. Karen sincerely thanks her for the precious help, and Rika cheerfully replies that that's what friends are for. The blonde assures that she also had a lot of fun shopping and that she will always be there to support her friend in whatever she needs. Karen asks if just a snack is enough for Yusung's size and offers to pay for more food for him. She insists in a kind way, stating that paying for the snack is the least she can do for all the help she received from him. The main character eats his burger and thinks that despite the reputation as a troublemaker, the redhead is a very attentive girl. Karen notices his look and asks if there is something on her face, causing the young man to joke, saying there is ketchup there. Karen panics, wiping her cheek, but Yusung laughs, saying it was a joke, and asks about the date plans. She confidently replies that the basic itinerary of the outing will be to go to a coffee shop, then to the cinema, and finish by having dinner. Upon hearing Karen's simple plans, Rika shouts, pointing out that her friend is being too naive about love. Rika argues that an ordinary date won't impress and suggests an alternative on her phone to replace the cinema. The redhead looks at her friend's phone screen and is surprised to see that the suggestion is to take him to an aquarium. With a dreamy look, the blonde describes the glowing waters, the colorful fish, and the coral reefs dancing calmly. She completes saying that the soft lighting is perfect for the two to talk quietly and get even closer. Karen fully agrees with the romance expert, while Yusung merely sighs tiredly with all that drama. When it's time to say goodbye, Rika wishes good luck for the big day and congratulates her friend for the effort in the preparations. Karen thanks her from afar for the support and says goodbye while the two friends wave back before leaving. The two keep walking through the streets while the blonde maintains a large and happy smile plastered on her face. Suddenly, Rika asks what he is going to do the next day, and the young man replies that he plans to just read manga at home. Rika invites him to spy on Karen's date, leaving the main character indignant about losing his weekend rest. She insists they must ensure their friend's happiness, causing Yusung to surrender and accept the idea even without much desire. Rika cheerfully celebrates high-fiving his hand, officially sealing the spying duo for the following day, on the day of the date. Karen's father appears disguised with sunglasses and a flashy wig that attracts curious looks on the street. He positions himself at the agreed spot and thinks that that is the exact meeting point where his daughter will have her first outing. Ryuji finally arrives running and apologizes in a friendly way for the minor delay upon meeting the young woman. Karen smiles in a very gentle way and tells him not to worry, stating that she also just arrived. The boy shyly praises her look, causing the redhead's heart to race with so much emotion at that moment. She thanks him extremely bashfully, while the two begin walking side by side along the busy sidewalk. The redhead suggests starting the outing by having some tea to plan the day, and the boy promptly agrees with the idea. Karen excitedly takes the lead, without noticing that a mysterious hooded figure observes them intently from afar. Yusung and Rika are hidden behind a pillar using glasses and hoods to watch the couple without being noticed. The blonde runs off to follow the couple's steps closely, causing the main character to go after her in a hurry, while the couple walks peacefully toward the cafe. The disguised mobsters follow them right behind with furious looks. Tojo Naoto observes the two from afar and begins trembling out of pure jealousy upon seeing the boy so close to his dear daughter. The president freaks out with anger, complaining about the boy's 5-minute delay, while his assessor tries to hold him back. The assistant whispers, warning that the people around are finding the group very suspicious due to their outbursts. He explains that walking in a group of 9 people draws too much attention and suggests they split into spying duos. The boss agrees with the strategy and orders everyone to split up immediately to continue the mission discreetly. The scene then focuses on the entrance of a cozy establishment that operates as a bookstore and coffee shop. A gigantic dessert decorated with strawberries, ice cream, and whipped cream is served at the table, looking delicious. Rika takes pictures super excited of her giant dessert, ignoring the fact that they should merely be spying. The girl teases her friend, asking if he wouldn't manage to handle a sweet like that alone, leaving him confused. Looking around, the main character begins to sense a strange and suspicious atmosphere coming from the other tables of the place. Several men in suits and sunglasses begin to fill the space, leaving the environment incredibly tense and packed. Yusung seriously suspects those characters and suspects that all of them have some strong connection to Karen's family. He notices with considerable attention a man with long red hair who seems to be exuding a furious aura. The young man realizes that despite the silly and ridiculous wig, the man's features are identical to those of Karen's protective father. Shifting the focus to his phone, Yusung discovers that the aquarium chosen for the outing also features a dolphin wing. At the next table, Karen cheerfully comments that she highly wants to see the dolphins first, and Ryuji agrees with a gentle smile. The redhead displays a radiant smile full of pure happiness. Thinking about how that day promises to be fun, Yusung observes the amount of spies piled up around and predicts that his friend's date will be a true trial. Shortly after, the sound of announcements from the busy Shibuya subway station echoes while the trains prepare to depart, with the train doors closing. The young man pulls Rika close to protect her from the shoving of the crowd. She gets extremely blushed upon being pressed against his chest, while people continue stepping into the car. The blonde tries to keep her cool with the sudden proximity. While the main character is surprised by the amount of passengers, he looks down to check if his friend is okay, causing her to give a small start upon meeting his gaze up close. He gently asks her to hold on tight just a bit longer, leaving the girl's heart beating in an uncontrolled way. As soon as the doors open, the intense flow of people begins to move, pushing everyone out of the car. Seeing they might end up losing sight of the couple amidst the crowd, the young man firmly holds the blonde's hand. He firmly guides her through the packed station, ensuring that the two remain on the tail of the mission without getting lost. The young man breathes a sigh of relief upon finally managing to exit that overcrowded subway station. Alongside his friend Rika, shyly asks him to let go of her hand, leaving the main character totally embarrassed and apologizing. The two slowly pull their hands away, creating a bit of a tense and silent atmosphere between them at that instant. With blushed cheeks, the blonde whispers, asking him to be a bit gentler on a next opportunity. The main character awkwardly agrees, but goes deep in thought, wondering what she meant by a next time. They end up losing sight of the green light, and Rika panics upon realizing they ended up losing sight of the couple. Yu-sung calms his friend, saying that their final destination is the aquarium, and suggests going straight there to find them right behind them. The members of the mafia organization also complain quite a bit about the large amount of people there. Upon hearing the men's discussion about the city traffic, Yu-sung glances and finds them extremely suspicious. The young man soon recalls that he has already seen those exact same characters loitering near Karen's massive mansion. He decides to act with much caution and pulls his hood down to prevent any of them from ending up recognizing his face. The boss notices his presence and points, but Assistant Sento soon identifies the young man as being Karen's close friend. The assessor recalls that those teenagers helped the girl in the preparations for the date and that his physique gives him away. The mafia leader understands the situation and realizes that the teenagers are there merely because they are worried about their friend's date. Since they also lost sight of Karen, the boss decides that the group's best strategy will be to follow the steps of the two young men. With a decided look, the group president gives the order for everyone to begin following the spying duo closely. Meanwhile, the couple finally arrives at the main entrance of the beautiful aquarium and cheerfully celebrates being there. The boy calls the redhead to enter, without noticing that two bruised students with bandages observe them from afar on the street. The two injured troublemakers look at each other surprised upon spotting the young couple passing right in front of them. The young man with a neck brace points toward the entrance and asks if that one walking there isn't indeed Sakamoto. They confirm his identity and get furious, seeing that the one responsible for their expulsion from the club is on a date. With totally dark looks full of hatred, the two thugs promise to take revenge on the young man no matter the cost. Already inside the location, the main character and the blonde continue their mission of watching the couple hidden in the corners of the hallways. Even with the environment's quite soft lighting hindering vision, the friend couple's happiness is evident. Yu-sung focuses his gaze on the situation and realizes that there is a very important detail he can state with absolute certainty. Their date is progressing in an incredibly better and more harmonious way than the young man had predicted, seeing the success of his friend's plan. The main character wonders if there is even any need to continue spying there. Later, the scene shifts to the beautiful and sunny Minami Ikebukuro Park, where several people enjoy the day. Rika opens a well-crafted lunchbox and gets her eyes sparkling upon seeing the delicious rice balls and sushi pieces. Yu-sung explains that he prepared a full banquet for their picnic so that they could eat well while watching the two. Rika cheerfully agrees and takes a large and flavorful bite of the first piece, highly praising her friend's cooking a bit further ahead. The couple sits on a blanket on the grass to enjoy their lunch while the spies observe Karen gets extremely tense and with widened eyes when it's time to offer the lunchbox. She prepared with so much affection. Yu-sung understands her nervousness, recalling that it is the first time the redhead prepares something for the person she likes. He recalls Karen's messages asking for kitchen tips and how she practiced day and night non-stop during 3 days upon opening the bento. Ryuji gets highly impressed with the wonderful appearance and the well-crafted details of all the food Karen asks in a somewhat clumsy way for him to eat plenty, and the boy excitedly starts by picking up a rice ball. The young man bites into the rice ball with gusto, while the redhead observes him intently in an agonizing silence. Upon hearing the sincere compliment that the food was great, Karen's face lights up with pure happiness and relief. Excited with the first success, she picks up a piece of chicken and tries to feed it into the boy's mouth, leaving him a bit surprised. With blushed cheeks and a shy determination, she insists on feeding him directly, without backing down a centimeter. Ryuji shyly accepts the food with closed eyes, while the girl anxiously asks for his opinion on the flavor. He gives a thumbs up, praising the spectacular flavor of everything, leaving the young woman with red cheeks of joy. While observing the romantic mood of the two friends at the picnic, Rika begins to make a thoughtful and dreamy face. The young man continues feeding Karen with the chopsticks, creating a moment of much complicity and affection between the couple. He smiles and says he is satisfied for now, demonstrating how much he adored all the effort she put into the lunch. Karen hides her blushed face in her hands and cries from so much happiness, seeing that her romantic plan is truly working. Rika comments that everything is going surprisingly well, but suddenly begins to suspect if her advice truly worked. The blonde brings her hands together with sparkling eyes and comments, sighing that she would also like to have a romantic date like that one day. Yu-sung mockingly points his finger, recalling that she always self-declared as a great expert in matters of the heart. Rika awkwardly confesses that in reality, she has never dated anyone and learned everything she knows by reading romance manga. The young man sighs and says that the couple is already arranging to leave, suggesting they continue to follow them. Rika gets very angry at being ignored by him, complaining out loud about not being taken seriously in her stories. oblivious to everything. Ryuji and Karen walk peacefully side by side through the park, conversing in a very pleasant mood. Hidden behind a tree, the main character thinks that the atmosphere between the two is ideal for a confession to happen. Suddenly, a loud noise of a collision interrupts the tranquility of the place. Leaving the young man on alert immediately, Yusung and Rika look surprised, seeing that the two bruised thugs from the subway appeared to confront the couple. The troublemakers flash malicious smiles and say they were looking for the young man everywhere to settle the score. They taunt Ryuji in front of Karen, inventing lies about him being a tremendous lady killer who steals other people's girls. Rika suggests calling the police, but Yusung prefers to wait to see if he will need to step in personally in case things get worse. Ryuji faces them irritated about being there, while the thugs continue mocking and taunting him without any fear. Upon observing the thugs' layout closer, the main character finally recalls who they are and from where he knows them. He recalls that those were the freshmen who tried to harass Maya and ended up taking a beating from Ryuji after the mess in the alley. One of them shouts in anger for having been expelled from the kendo club before managing to get close to Fumayukika. His senior Karen gets extremely irritated hearing that so futile and ridiculous reason for they to be picking a fight in the park. The redhead points her finger, giving them a tremendous lecture, saying that immature attitude is the sole reason they were expelled. One of the thugs suddenly widens his eyes and realizes that the girl there with makeup and a dress is in reality Senior Tojo. He begins to mock Karen for being so dressed up and asks in a mocking tone if she is on a date with that failure. The thug continues with the offensive taunts, saying she doesn't match the young man at all and that she only lives fighting in the mud. Ryuji explodes with anger seeing his friend being humiliated and shouts for them to shut their mouths, firmly defending Karen's honor. The thug warns with a wicked smile that they didn't come alone, while a huge and threatening figure emerges right behind the two thugs, celebrate relieved seeing that their heavy reinforcement finally arrived to help them in the fight. The muscular man faces Ryuji with an arrogantly calm smile, saying he is the fellow who dared mess with his companions. The thugs proudly present leader Hayashi, describing him in an intimidating way as a legend of street fights. Ryuji desperately asks Karen to flee from there immediately, but the redhead firmly refuses to leave him alone. Before the danger, Hayashi loses patience with the conversation of the two and commands that they stop the nonsense immediately with an entirely cold look. With a swift and rough movement, the brute firmly grips Karen's wrist, preventing her from managing to step away before the girl's fright. Hayashi begins to laugh mockingly and suggestively proposes that she have fun with him. Instead of the other, Ryuji desperately tries to charge to rescue his friend, but Hayashi easily blocks him and says he is merely getting in the way. The bully delivers a violent punch against Ryuji's chest, sending the young man directly to the ground with extreme force. Upon seeing the cowardice of the assault, the main character feels a tremendous hatred and tells his friend to wait there while he takes action. Karen desperately shouts for her injured friend on the ground, while Hayashi keeps her trapped and continues smiling with total mockery. The brute mocks the situation and says he is going to take the girl away, while Ryuji remains fallen on the ground trying to recover. He continues talking nonsense very close to her face, without noticing that a gigantic and intimidating shadow emerges right behind him. Feeling a shiver of pure danger down his spine, the bully looks back confused upon running into the main character's dark presence. Without saying a single word, the main character squeezes the brute's wrist with so much force that it makes him scream in pain immediately. With extreme ease, he hurls the brute far away onto the sidewalk, leaving the other two thugs in complete shock. With a deadly look and surrounded by an intimidating dark aura, he seriously warns them to take their dirty hands off his friend. The leader stands up from the ground, startled, and shakily asks from where that incredibly strong fellow just appeared. All of a sudden, Hayashi furiously shouts, accusing the young man of having made a treacherous attack and challenges him to fight in a clean and direct way from then on. The main character remains standing, with arms down and in total silence, displaying an imposing posture that frightens the opponents. The brute tries to convince himself that he was caught by surprise and that the opponent is merely an ordinary citizen who knows how to land some punches. Hidden in the park bushes, the spies of the mafia organization observe the scene and ask if they shouldn't step into the fight moments before. The mobsters ran tired and out of breath through the park, looking for the trail of the kids they had lost. The assistant explains that he lost sight of them for an instant after the picnic, but suddenly spots something happening further ahead. They look in the pointed direction and witness the exact moment in which Thug Hayashi is holding Karen's wrist by force. The protective father emerges from the middle of the bushes, spitting fire with rage upon seeing that low life touching his dear daughter in a rough way. A henchman suggests grabbing the weapons immediately to attack the thugs, but the president commands them to wait upon noticing something unusual. He decides to hold the men back upon seeing that the other hooded young man is already approaching to resolve the situation. He tells everyone to pay close attention to that young man's back, who begins to emanate an extremely powerful energy in the park. Naoto looks down at his own hands, his body beginning to tremble slightly as an incredibly suffocating pressure fills the air. He swallows hard, a look of pure shock on his face, as he realizes he has felt this exact same terrifying sensation once before. The chairman flashes back to Ivan the Destroyer, the feared supreme leader of the Russian mob back in his day. He remembers that the overwhelming dread he felt when confronting him in Japan was exactly the same as what he is feeling right now. It is the absolute terror brought on by a true monster possessed of incomparable destructive power. The mobster is completely stunned to see the same dark aura of a crime lord radiating from an ordinary high school kid, with a look of absolute fury in his eyes. The prota decides to throw out the rulebook and take matters into his own hands. He steps forward with absolute purpose, completely focused on taking down the punks who dared to hurt his friend. Standing protectively in front of them, he orders Karen to get Ryuji out of there immediately, completely taking control of the situation. The redhead hesitates, deeply worried, but the prota calms her down, confidently promising that he would never lose to guys like them. Hayashi absolutely loses his mind at being ignored and charges at the young man, screaming with pure hatred. The thug throws a lightning-fast combination of punches, but the prota blocks and counters the strikes without breaking a sweat. His lackeys cheer wildly, fully believing that their leader's spectacular speed would deliver a decisive blow. Hayashi finishes his combo with a confident smirk, mocking his opponent because he thinks the kid failed to dodge a single hit. However, the young man stands completely unfazed, without showing any reaction at all, which completely catches the attacker off guard. Furious and rattled by the kid's insane durability, Hayashi winds up to throw another massive punch with every ounce of his strength. The strike lands squarely on the prota's face, creating a massive impact right before everyone's eyes. Rika watches the scene unfold in absolute panic, screaming her friend's name, terrified that he might be seriously hurt. Karen and Ryuji also watch in complete shock as the young man takes such a brutal attack head-on. The prota does not even flinch. He simply wipes a thin trail of blood from his cheek, causing the bully to step back, shaking in pure terror. With an incredibly serious and intimidating glare, the young man warns him that from here on out, whatever he does counts as self-defense. Hayashi stutters in absolute panic as he sees the prota's fist coming toward his face at blinding speed. With a single, devastating straight right, the prota strikes the bully's face with absolutely colossal power. The spectacular impact completely shatters the brute's guard, sending him flying backward with incredible violence. He hits the grass, completely knocked out cold from that single strike, leaving his lackeys totally desperate and frozen in shock. The young man figures that throwing more than one punch would be overkill, which is why he put everything he had into that single, decisive blow. The prota coldly remarks that he expected his opponent to be a lot tougher, leaving the remaining punks even more terrified. He approaches them with a dark gaze, stating that they crossed the line by hurting his friends, and asks if they understand what comes next. The cowards burst into tears, threatening to call the cops and their influential fathers, but the young man simply scoffs at their empty threats. He grabs both thugs firmly by their heads, telling them he is about to knock some sense into their twisted minds. He applies a crushing grip that makes them scream in absolute agony, begging for mercy right there in the middle of the park. After teaching the two cowards a textbook lesson, the prota simply tosses them aside onto the grass without putting in any effort at all. Completely broken and trembling, they stay on their knees, pathetically begging for their lives. The young man coldly orders them to get lost and never dare show their faces in front of Tojo Karen or Sakamoto Ryuji ever again. The thugs nod in absolute desperation, picking up their unconscious leader in their arms and run away as fast as their legs can carry them. Rika rushes over to her friend in a panic, telling him they need to get out of there quickly before things get complicated. The young man downplays the scratch on his face, but the blonde totally snaps, telling him they are heading straight to the drugstore right now. He gives in without arguing, thinking to himself that this is the very first time he has ever seen his friend look this furious. Meanwhile, the other two friends sit down on a park bench to talk things out after the whole mess has finally been settled. The two spies watch the tense atmosphere between the couple from a distance and decide to give them some space to talk in private. Karen lowers her head in deep sadness and sincerely apologizes, feeling completely responsible for him getting hurt. Because of her, Ryuji smiles gently and apologizes as well, explaining that those punks were actually targeting him all along. After a brief moment of awkward silence, the redhead works up the courage to tell the young man something of utmost importance. With her cheeks blushing a bright red and her eyes shining with emotion, she finally confesses her feelings, telling him she really likes him. Ryuji completely freezes, totally speechless in the face of such an unexpected and heartfelt confession from his friend. She completes her request with absolute sweetness, formally asking him to be her boyfriend starting today. The redhead clasps her hands together, wearing her heart on her sleeve as she anxiously awaits the young man's answer on the bench. However, the young man looks away with an extremely uncomfortable and sad expression, leaving a heavy tension hanging in the air. He apologizes from the bottom of his heart, revealing with deep regret that he unfortunately cannot give her the answer she wants to hear. He tries to justify it by saying she is way too good for him, but explains he has serious personal reasons for not being able to accept. Karen asks in surprise about those reasons, and Ryuji reveals that he made a childhood promise to marry a certain girl. The young man explains with a melancholy look that he needs to wait until he crosses paths with this mysterious person again. He concludes by firmly stating that because of this old promise, he does not plan on dating anyone else. Hearing those words completely breaks Karen's heart, leaving her sitting in silence with her head down, completely lost for words. She asks if he still holds her in such high regard, and Ryuji confesses he is not entirely sure, but remembers crying his eyes out when she moved away. Karen asks with her head down if she was his very first love, and the young man confirms it with a sad nod of his head. The redhead suddenly stands up and says she understands his decision, promising to let go of her feelings once and for all. She forces a big smile and waves goodbye, saying she will see him at school and that she had a blast on their date. Ryuji waves back with a warm, understanding look, relieved that they were able to have such an honest and mature conversation. The moment she steps away from the bench, the girl quickens her pace and starts running away as fast as she can. Rika cries her eyes out, witnessing the heartbreaking scene, and Yusung gently asks his friend to head home ahead of him. The blonde is surprised by the request, but the young man simply says goodbye, telling her he will see her at school next week. Rika lets out a soft sigh and watches her friend walk away, realizing he probably wants to go comfort the redhead. She is left deep in thought, noticing that the prota seemed to carry a very heavy expression in his eyes as he ran off. Karen is sitting all by herself crying on a bench when she suddenly notices Yusung's shoes stopping right in front of her. He approaches with a very calm look and affectionately asks if she is holding up. Okay, right. Now seeing her friend there, the redhead can no longer hold back her emotions and bursts into tears of pure sadness and frustration. He sits beside her to try to comfort her, offering a handkerchief while mentioning in a friendly tone that it is obvious she is not okay. He casually helps her wipe her face, telling her to take a deep breath and relax so she can get her strength back. Karen sheepishly confesses that she has never cried in front of anyone before, but he reassures her by reminding her that they are friends. The girl repeats the word thoughtfully, feeling a great sense of comfort, knowing she has someone she can truly rely on. She completely catches the young man off guard by revealing she knew he and Rika were spying on their date the entire time. The prota gets incredibly embarrassed, breaking out in a cold sweat as he realizes they were absolutely terrible spies that day. Karen gives a soft smile and says she knows they were just incredibly worried about her since they had helped her out from the very start. She apologizes with a heavy heart for failing the plan, revealing she truly believed that changing her style would be enough. The redhead sadly realizes that there was never any real room for her to enter her crush's heart from the very beginning. She clutches her chest through her tears, saying that the pain of rejection hurts so much, it feels like it is going to drive her crazy. She admits through her sobs that she has never felt such deep pain in her entire life, leaving the prota sitting in silence by her side. The redhead breaks down, crying with all her might, admitting out loud just how much she truly loved her dear friend. Yusung grows reflective, thinking about how he used to view these people as mere side characters in a manga. He remembers Rika and realizes that in the beginning, he also kept a polite, superficial distance from her, deep down in his heart. He had always drawn a clear line separating himself from those fictional comic book characters. He looks at the girl's genuine suffering and questions if he can really call someone a mere character when their pain is so real. With a determined look, the prota stands up from the park bench and extends his hand, asking her to get on her feet. He playfully points out that if she stays slumped over like that, someone is going to call the cops on them for loitering. Hearing that completely random joke right in the middle of her crying session, the redhead cannot help but let out a silly little laugh. She complains while finding amusement in the bizarre moment, and he smiles back, saying that a smile suits her much better. The young man suddenly starts taking off his hoodie, making the redhead blush as she catches a glimpse of his muscular back. He places the warm hoodie right into Karen's arms, affectionately ordering her to put it on immediately to warm up. The prota adjusts the hood over her head and confidently reveals that their next destination is going to be a fun karaoke bar. He gives her a gentle pat on the head, explaining that she is going to scream and sing until all the sadness leaves her heart. Wearing his oversized hoodie, the girl runs right behind him, trying to keep up while sheepishly calling him back. The redhead watches him walk ahead of her and thinks to herself how this guy is always so incredibly random and unpredictable. He gently pulls her by the wrist, and she begins to realize that the people around her are, after all, just like him. Smiling happily inside the cozy hoodie, she realizes that everyone there is a real human being with genuine feelings and emotions. Hiding nearby, the mobsters watch the scene with a sigh of relief, and the chairman admits he is overjoyed his daughter has a friend like him. The boss maturely reflects that in a world as tough and dangerous as theirs, young people with good hearts are a rare find. He smirks slightly behind his sunglasses, beginning to view the prota with a great deal of respect and admiration. The mafia leader bids a silent farewell to the young man, sincerely hoping that their paths will cross again one day. Once at the karaoke lounge, the redhead blasts her voice into the microphone, wildly telling the prota to play the tambourine with way more energy. Next, it is Yoo-sung's turn to take the mic, leaving the young man completely stressed out by the challenge. Rika excitedly walks into Yoo-sung's room and is completely taken aback to see what a real guy's room actually looks like. She asks if every guy keeps this much workout equipment in his room, and he sheepishly replies that it is not exactly standard. Curious, the blonde quickly spots several heavy dumbbells scattered across the wooden floor. Rika tries to lift one of them with all her might, but the weight does not even budge, making her complain that it does not even seem made for humans. The prota explains that the dumbbell weighs half as much as she does, all while wondering how on earth he ended up with this girl in his room. He recalls that it all started normally enough, with the two of them walking together toward the subway after class. Right in the middle of their conversation, an incredibly loud stomach growl abruptly cuts off the topic. Yoo-sung notices the situation instantly and straight up asks his friend if she is hungry. The young man suggests stopping by his family's restaurant to grab a bite, and she excitedly remembers that they own a business. Yoo-sung goes along with the plan, thinking that treating his friend to a single meal would be no trouble at all. Shortly after the two arrive at the charming and cozy restaurant run by Yoo-sung's family, Rika starts inhaling the food at an impressive speed, leaving the young man a bit shocked by her massive appetite. After taking a huge chug from her soda can, the blonde lets out a sigh of ultimate satisfaction. The girl praises the food, saying it tasted amazing, which makes Yoo-sung's mother incredibly happy to hear the restaurant owner warmly thanks her and tells her to eat as much as she likes, promising to whip up even more dishes. The young man watches the scene in silence, realizing his mother has taken a serious liking to Rika. Out of nowhere, the blonde gives her friend a hard slap on the back and tells him it is time to head to their next spot. Still coughing from the sudden shock, he asks in confusion where she wants to go. All of a sudden, Rika gives her friend a mischievous wink and replies that the goal now is to check out his room. Carrying a tray of drinks, Yoo-sung regrets being so naive to think that nothing out of the ordinary would happen. He opens the door saying they can have a drink while they chat, but stops dead in his tracks when he sees what she is doing. Rika is sitting down reading one of his romance manga volumes and asks if he actually enjoys that kind of reading material. The girl mentions she did not expect him to be into that style, while the young man thinks to himself that he only bought the books for reference. Rika quickly says she is just teasing and claims she knows perfectly well that his real passion lies in shonen manga. She spots the collection on his shelves and excitedly asks if he is a fan of a famous series called Golden Samurai. He confirms it, saying it is his absolute favorite work of all time, making the girl cheer as she reveals she loves the story too. The young man mentions he often rereads it from the beginning, and the blonde is completely starstruck to notice they are rare collector's editions. The prota praises the manga as a flawless masterpiece, highlighting the unforgettable ending that completely won him over. Rika listens to her friend's opinion, with her eyes shining with joy and admiration that they share the exact same taste. He keeps talking excitedly about the character development, mentioning he has never met anyone who loved the series as much as he does. Rika mentions that her dad is going to be absolutely thrilled to hear that, leaving the prota a bit confused by the comment. She asks if she somehow never mentioned before that her dad is a manga artist and the creator of Golden Samurai itself. Yoo-sung goes into absolute shock upon discovering that his friend is the daughter of the legendary manga artist Kishimoto Musashi. The young man starts connecting the dots, remembering the last name matches perfectly, and thinking about her unique shade of blonde hair. He remembers the rumor that the author's wife is British, which perfectly explains his friend's features and this massive cliché. At that exact moment, he realizes that he has actually already scheduled a visit to her house during the upcoming Golden Week holiday. He grabs Rika by the shoulders and desperately screams, begging for her dad's autograph when they meet up over the break. The blonde promises to introduce him to her dad personally, making the prota cry tears of joy for winning at life as a fanboy. After calming down, Yusung mentions that he has one burning question he would love to clear up once and for all. He asks why Golden Samurai is her favorite manga, considering her dad has written several other incredibly famous series. She explains simply that the story has just really grown on her lately, without needing any kind of deep special reason. But right after, she starts affectionately detailing a very specific moment from Volume 5 of the famous comic book. She describes how the main character always puts the safety and well-being of his friends ahead of everything else. In the girl's mind, a vivid image of Yusung pops up, acting exactly the same way to protect the people who matter to him. She reflects on how the hero of the story manages to be extremely powerful, yet incredibly gentle at the same time. With a soft smile, she realizes deep down just how much that fearless warrior reminds her of Yusung himself. The next day, classes return to normal and the school routine for all the students resumes at the academy. Inside the student council room, an unexpected conversation brings up the upcoming plans for Golden Week. His council colleague holds the prota to his word, reminding him that he had promised to help her out during those days. She explains she needs to dodge a pretty terrifying teacher and mentions that the school is hosting an exchange student from Russia. She wants to give the visitor a memorable welcome gift and asks for the young man's help in picking out that special item. The girl excitedly points her finger and confirms that this is the exact favor she needs from him. Yusung agrees to help and suggests scheduling their meetup for the 29th, thinking he does not have much of a choice but to cooperate. She celebrates by snapping her fan open and warns him she won't forgive him if he breaks his promise, catching the prota off guard with her speed. The young woman dismisses him to head back to class, and he walks away thoughtfully, noting how she went from zero to a great mood instantly. To avoid a scheduling conflict, the young man decides to ask Rika if they can move their visit to the 30th instead. Back out in the hallway, a classmate approaches looking super curious, asking if he has heard the latest gossip yet. The friend brings up the notorious first-year troublemakers who were causing messes in the kendo club and ended up getting expelled. He reveals that both punks requested a school transfer on the exact same day, finding the whole coincidence incredibly sketchy. Yusung gives a subtle smirk and simply comments that they must have their own reasons for packing up and leaving. He thinks to himself that it was well-deserved, since now those two won't be bothering Sakamoto and Tojo Karen at school anymore. The new teacher walks into the classroom with a gentle smile and jokes about the students being sluggish on a Monday morning. She warmly instructs everyone to take their proper seats and open their English textbooks to get the lesson started. Class begins, and a simple English question appears on the board asking which of the two displayed fruits is the cheaper option. While the explanation continues, Rika gives her friend a few light taps on the back to try to get his attention. The English teacher's name is Mizuki Nanai, and to continue the classroom exercise, she decides to pick today's date number to call on someone. She calls out number 24, throwing Yusung's classmate into a total panic for being the chosen one. However, the teacher asks for the person sitting right behind that number to do the reading. Shifting the spotlight onto the prota, Yusung calmly stands up and reads in flawless English, asking about recommendations for places to visit in Japan. The teacher swallows hard and, visibly nervous, asks what a good response to that question would be. Without a second thought, he answers by suggesting Osaka and gives a detailed breakdown of why the location is excellent for tourists. Mizuki completely freezes with a tense expression, making the young man wonder why on earth she is reacting so strangely. She covers it up by clapping her hands and praises his perfect answer, while the rest of the class applauds with great enthusiasm. Despite the compliments, he notices clear as day that she made a face like she absolutely hated that answer. Mizuki glares at him with a tense, worried look, thinking about how the young man has been completely crushing it in her classes. She quickly turns back to the board to try to keep the focus on the lesson and explain the vocabulary of the text. Observing the finer details of the teacher's behavior, Yusung is absolutely certain that his suspicions were right on the money. He realizes that, for some bizarre reason, Mizuki-sensei seems to be utterly terrified of his presence in the classroom. He walks down the hallway remembering the absurd rumors people made up about him being a mafia heir who takes down street gangs. Even though he is used to the idiotic gossip, he finds it weird that people are actually showing physical terror around him. He decides to act as ordinary and low profile as possible as he enters the faculty room so nobody gets the wrong idea. In the office, Mizuki reviews Yusung's school records and is completely stunned to see he is a model student with straight A's. She starts cooking up wild theories in her head, wondering if his perfect grades are just a cover identity before he takes her out. She gets goosebumps from sheer terror upon hearing the sudden click of the door opening right behind her desk chair. The proto enters the room with a polite bow, but the teacher views him as a literal demonic entity walking in. She panics and starts rambling about how she is not nervous at all, while the young man notices her instant desperation right there. He can clearly tell she is terrified and wonders what on earth to do in such an incredibly awkward situation. The young man calmly explains that he only came by for the career counseling interview that she had scheduled. Relieved to understand the actual reason for his visit, she quickly snaps back into character and warmly invites him to take a seat. The teacher starts the chat by asking if he has given any thought to what career path he wants to pursue after high school. He says he is still not entirely sure, and she suggests the idea of taking over his family's business if he cannot make up his mind. In her overactive imagination, the teacher already pictures the young man leading a violent street gang and shivers at her own thoughts. Stuttering, she works up the nerve to ask what his parents do for a living, and he answers that they run a small diner. The young woman repeats the answer in surprise and confusion, making the young man politely ask if there is an issue with that. She instantly denies it with a wide smile and says she would love to check the place out, leaving the young man relieved to clear up the misunderstanding. She moves on with the form's questions and wants to know which school subjects the proto feels most confident in. She suggests he go into STEM, but the young man disagrees, stating that picking a career path simply because it is easy is foolish. Mizuki stares at him in surprise, reflecting on the sheer maturity of such a firm answer coming from such a young student. With a focused gaze, Yusung finishes his thought by confidently stating that he wants to work in a field he truly loves. She agrees that talent and passion are two different things, while he remembers his grueling past life in engineering with pure dread. The teacher confesses that she did not plan on going into education at first either, sparking the kid's curiosity about her past. Looking pretty embarrassed, she asks him to promise he won't laugh at her revelation, and the young man assures her he will keep a straight face. With a nostalgic look, the teacher reveals that her big childhood dream was to become a professional voice actress. She mentions she fell head over heels for a character from a mesa anime back when she was just in middle school. However, when she brought up her dream during career counseling, her old teacher told her that hobbies should be saved for later. Her old mentor advised that it would be much better and safer to focus on landing a stable job first. At the time, she followed the advice thinking it was the right move, but ended up bitterly regretting it the moment she hit college seeing posters for voice acting events on campus. The painful regret of giving up on her dream just grew heavier and heavier. She realized she had made the most important decision of her entire life by easily giving in to someone else's opinion. She advises Yusung to think things through very carefully before making a choice, making it clear this isn't just a teacher giving advice. Rather, it is a heartfelt warning from an elder who has gone through that exact same difficult crossroads in the past. She wraps up the topic with a warm smile, hoping the young man has truly grasped the weight of her message. With deep respect, Yusung thanks her immensely for the honest words and the invaluable advice he received from his mentor. After he leaves, another older teacher approaches Mizuki, curious about the kid, and brings up his notorious mafia reputation. The coworker lists all the rumors he heard about Yusung taking down entire gangs all by himself across the city. Mizuki cuts him off instantly, defending her student and firmly stating that all those stories are nothing but fake gossip. She confidently guarantees that, in reality, the proto is just a highly dedicated, gentle, and considerate student. She promises herself never to judge a book by its cover again, leaving her colleague embarrassed for listening to so much school gossip. The Golden Week holiday finally arrives, and the scene now shifts to the bustling entrance of a beautiful traditional shrine in Tokyo. Dressed in casual clothes, Yusung checks his phone and realizes he ended up arriving way ahead of the scheduled time for their meetup. He spots a girl in a purple dress with her back turned and immediately calls out her name, recognizing her right away. However, she spins around, pointing an angry finger at him, claiming he is incredibly late, which leaves the young man totally confused. She demands an immediate explanation, sharply questioning if he even has any awareness of what time it is right now. The young woman keeps chewing him out with her hands on her hips, making the proto break out in a cold sweat, completely lost as to why he is getting lectured. He shows her that there are still 10 minutes left before the scheduled time, but she fires back that a gentleman should always arrive half an hour early. He apologizes just to avoid a scene, while the young woman decides to let it slide this one time under a very specific condition. She points to a nearby dessert shop and demands that he buy her a matcha ice cream cone as a penalty for his supposed lack of manners. The young man questions why on earth he has to foot the bill for the treat, which only makes the girl even more annoyed with his questioning. Suddenly, a loud smack echoes, interrupting their argument in a highly comical fashion. Nursing a massive bump on his head, the young man pays for the treat, completely resigned, while she happily enjoys her ice cream. She praises the delicious flavor of the treat, and the prota peacefully comments that he is glad to see she likes it. He reminds her that they need to focus on buying the visitor's welcome gift, leaving the girl completely frozen at the question. She tries to play it off by snapping her fan open and ordering him to just follow her, but the young man quickly realizes she had completely forgotten the mission. At that exact moment, a mysterious voice suddenly comes through the discreet earpiece hidden inside Kumiko's ear. The voice informs her that there is an excellent traditional craft shop close by and suggests she lead the young man there to pick out the gift. Back in the car, the agents advise her to try acting more natural and sweet to successfully charm the young man during their outing. In reality, it is her family's butler and maid who are undercover monitoring everything to ensure the date is a total success. Upon stepping into the recommended shop, Kumiko looks completely starstruck standing before a massive, imposing golden Buddha statue. She suggests buying that gigantic statue as a souvenir, making Yusung freeze up and the shopkeeper look extremely excited. The young woman brags about her flawless taste, while the merchant shows off other rare pieces, and the prota almost passes out. Looking at the absurd price tag, Kumiko hears a frantic scolding through her earpiece saying she hasn't followed the plan at all, getting startled by the loud volume. The voice over the radio panics that this is no time to play around, and the young woman tries to play it off by saying out loud that she just felt a sudden chill. She discreetly covers her mouth and whispers for the staff member to keep her voice down, drawing a bit of attention from others in the shop. Through the earpiece, Minami reminds her that the main goal of being here is a romantic date, telling her to take a look behind her. She reports that Yusung is distracted staring at his phone screen, which is a textbook sign that he is already getting bored. The handler warns her that rule number 1 is to never let your partner get bored, making the girl annoyed that she has to think fast. Kumiko rushes forward and grabs Yusung's arm, pretending she just remembered an errand of ultimate importance. She hastily says goodbye and drags the young man out of the shop, completely ignoring the merchant's protests about the rare collector's pieces. Meanwhile, at another spot on the busy sidewalk, some heavy footsteps approach, addressing the student council president by her title. Yusung places a worried hand on Kumiko's shoulder and asks if she is feeling okay, leaving the girl in a state of total shock. She covers up with her fan, claiming she just felt a slight dizzy spell, hastily suggesting they head straight to their next stop over the radio. Minami praises her quick recovery and tells her to head to a traditional clothing boutique to check out some kimonos and yukatas. The moment they arrive at the designated shop, they are immediately greeted by the beautiful traditional outfits displayed in the front window. The clerk showcases a gorgeous dark yukata model, commenting that the exchange student would absolutely love it. The prota thoughtfully analyzes the fabric and asks for Kumiko's opinion to see what she thinks of the style. She declares that the price does not matter and demands they bring out the most luxurious, exclusive piece in the entire store, shocking Yusung with her demands, taking that as a challenge. The clerk accepts the request with a competitive smile and decides to bring out something truly special to show them. She presents a breathtaking kimono that costs around 500,000 yen, nearly giving the young man a heart attack over the price. Kumiko finds the piece merely acceptable and asks to see other options, throwing the young man into absolute despair over such blatant flexing. Several expensive models are tried on and quickly rejected for not meeting the strict standards of the elegant president. Time flies by quickly as the endless try-on sessions continue inside the traditional clothing boutique. In the end, they are torn between just 2 options, and the clerk steps up with an interesting suggestion. She suggests that the girl try on the outfits herself to help make a decision, explaining that it is the best way to make the right choice. The clerk asks for Yusung's opinion, and the young man agrees that seeing the clothes worn would make the final decision much easier. Giving her no room to refuse, the friendly employee quickly escorts the blushing young woman toward the store's fitting room. The moment they step inside the fitting room, the sweet old lady suddenly peels a realistic mask right off her face. Kumiko goes into absolute shock upon realizing the sweet old lady was actually her maid Minami undercover the entire time. She asks how on earth her servant pulled that off, and the maid replies with a chuckle that she would do anything to support her young mistress. Manami proudly reveals she is a trained ninja of the family house, and that the actual store owner gladly handed over the space for the operation. The young woman quickly realizes that this entire situation of trying on the kimono was a calculated setup to showcase her charms. Manami starts dressing her boss without giving her time to complain, while the girl frantically warns her she is not mentally prepared for this. Outside, the prota hears some muffled shouting coming from the fitting room and wonders what on earth could be going on in there. Suddenly, the sound of the door opening echoes through the room, making the young man look up from his phone to see Kumiko steps out of the fitting room wearing an elegant dark kimono with floral prints and a beautiful red rose hairpiece in her hair. Coming face to face with the stunning sight, the young man turns completely red, totally paralyzed with admiration. Sheepishly fidgeting with her hands, the young woman timidly asks the young man how she looks wearing the traditional outfit. A heavy silence takes over the room for a few moments, making the girl even more anxious for a response from him. The prota swallows hard and finally manages to stutter out his first words of reaction after the initial shock. He says with absolute sincerity that she looks completely drop-dead gorgeous, making the young woman's heart race with pure joy. Turning his face away a bit sheepishly, he adds that the outfit truly suits her perfectly. She regains her proud composure, letting out her signature laugh behind her fan, while he applauds and praises her stunning beauty. Thrilled by the compliment, the girl mentions she is going to change again to try on the yukata and asks him to wait just a bit longer. The fitting room door closes with a soft click, leaving the young man all by himself once again in the store's lobby. Inside, Kumiko completely melts from sheer embarrassment, covering her bright red cheeks with her hands, unable to contain her emotions. She leans against the fitting room wall, completely out of breath, wondering what to do about her intense reaction to the young man. Returning to the street after their shopping spree, people all around start staring and blushing as they notice the elegant duo walking together. The young woman walks with ultimate grace and an enviable posture, drawing looks of admiration from every single pedestrian passing by. The young man thinks about how she truly stands out in a crowd and smirks as he notices they have finally reached the famous Nakano Broadway. Kumiko suggests grabbing lunch and mentions she will call a private chauffeur to take them home, flexing her immense wealth. As they walk, he thinks it is best to hurry up since they are drawing way too much attention when he hears a faint camera shutter sound. The young man looks back, intrigued by the noise, trying to figure out where that sudden sound came from in the middle of the sidewalk. He calms down upon seeing just two people in sunglasses taking a selfie together, chalking it up to pure paranoia on his part. The girl calls him to keep moving, and he agrees immediately, leaving the two undercover agents behind in their dust. Shinjiro breathes a sigh of relief, saying they were almost busted, while Manami furiously chews him out for getting way too close. He justifies it by saying he needed to snap good photos for Kumiko's progress report and complains about how dense the prota is regarding her feelings. Manami warns him that he absolutely must not display that attitude around the young mistress, and he reluctantly nods in silence. The two young people finally arrive at a cozy establishment and hear the door chime ring as they step inside. The prota introduces the spot, revealing that this is his absolute favorite ramen joint in the entire area that he visits all the time. He tells her to take her time browsing the menu while he quickly hits the restaurant's restroom to wash up elsewhere nearby. One of the tailing agents suddenly starts feeling sharp pains and cramps in his stomach out of nowhere. Shinjiro groans in pain with his hands over his stomach, drawing the attention of a highly worried Manami who rushes over. He blames the ice cream he ate at the shrine and listens to his partner telling him to slip away quietly so he doesn't ruin the boss's lunch. Unable to hold it in any longer, he apologizes and bolts off in a mad dash to find a nearby restroom. After successfully using the restroom, the young man walks out with an expression of immense relief and peace on his face. However, his relief vanishes instantly when he comes face to face with Yusung, washing his hands right there in front of him. Shinjiro points a shocked finger at him, and the prota is stunned to recognize the student council vice president back at the table. Kumiko smiles happily as she sees the young man return, thinking he had finally finished washing up to the young woman's utter surprise and shock. The prota reappears accompanied by none other than Minami and Shinjiro. He innocently explains that he just so happened to run into the vice president in the restroom along with his companion Yusung, mentions he feels deeply grateful for their help on the council, and decided to invite them to eat together because of it. Kumiko agrees while visibly shaking and breaking out in a cold sweat, completely unable to comprehend why those two just ruined the plan like that. He celebrates the unexpected reunion of the entire student council and good-naturedly invites the two to pull up a chair. Now sitting side by side, Kumiko internally laments watching her carefully planned, peaceful date completely go down the drain. Minami whispers a sincere apology, explaining the restroom emergency and asking her boss to just act natural from here on out. A short while later, steaming hot bowls of ramen are finally served at the table for everyone to enjoy. Kumiko stares at the dish with a look of pure wonder, catching the attention of the prota, who notices his friend's curious reaction. He asks in surprise if this is her very first time eating ramen, and she timidly confesses she had only ever seen the dish on television. The young man thinks about how she really is a high society noble girl, while the butler internally screams in a fury, defending his boss from the direct question. Ignoring the silent tension, Yusung anxiously asks if the flavor hits the spot for Kumiko's refined palate as she takes her first bite. With blushing cheeks, the young woman confesses in a highly adorable way that she finds the traditional dish absolutely delicious. Yusung lets out a genuine friendly smile upon seeing that his friend enjoyed his recommendation for his favorite food joint. The young man offers to order more dishes, but Shinjiro tries to chime in to eat it all, only to be instantly shut down by Minami due to his stomach ache. After stuffing themselves at the ramen shop, the group decides to keep the fun going by heading into a lively downtown arcade. Inside the arcade, a metal claw attempts to scoop up a cute teddy bear, but ends up letting the plushie slip away at the very last second. Kumiko laments almost bagging the plushie, and a highly confident Shinjiro immediately offers to win the prize for her right after. The two guys decide to face off in a thrilling, noisy match on a virtual fighting game cabinet. Shinjiro loudly celebrates his victory in the arcade, taunting Yusung for winning the intense round. Feeling his pride wounded and finding the trash talk a bit much, the prota's expression shifts, vowing to crush his rival in the next match. Behind his sunglasses, the butler smirks maliciously, determined to make the kid pay for getting way too close to his young boss. Yusung irritatedly points out that the machine still has plenty of credits left, and his rival welcomes the challenge with open arms, telling him to bring it on. In just a few seconds, the knockout sound echoes from the screen, and Shinjiro's character is humblingly defeated, leaving him completely speechless. With a terrifyingly victorious grin, Yusung taunts his opponent right back, telling the vice president to show a little more hustle next time. Gritting his teeth in pure frustration over being utterly destroyed, the butler refuses to accept the result and decides to switch up his strategy. He screams the prota's name in a tone of absolute challenge, making the young man glare back at him with an unamused face. The vice president dramatically points his finger across the arcade floor, declaring they are going to settle this dispute on a different machine. He challenges the young man to the punching machine, asserting that real men settle their differences using the raw strength of their bodies. He slowly begins unbuttoning his suit jacket, confidently stating that he hides a massive secret beneath his clothes. He proudly reveals an extremely ripped physique, leaving the prota in total shock at the butler's unexpected visual. The butler laughs victoriously at Yusung's stunned reaction, as the kid tries to comprehend how he managed to hide that much muscle under a suit. While Kumiko hides her face in embarrassment behind her fan, Minami facepalms, utterly done with her brother's sheer idiocy. The shirtless butler assumes the punch challenge is a go, despite the prota complaining that he never agreed to any of this. He fixes his sunglasses mockingly, taunting and asking if the young man was actually just anxious to run away from the matchup. The prota's gaze shifts to a cold, serious expression as he listens to his rival taunt, saying he expected much better from him. Shinjiro proudly extends his arm, swearing he never imagined the young man would be such a coward as to run from a strength competition. He tells the young man to pay close attention to his power move, confident he is about to deliver a major lesson in raw power right then and there. The vice president screams with all his determination and winds up his best fist to deliver a devastating punch to the testing machine. He charges forward with explosive speed and lands an incredibly powerful punch on the machine's heavy bag, unleashing all his physical energy. The score rapidly climbs until it hits an incredible 960 points, setting a new high score that leaves the girls thoroughly impressed. Shinjiro points victoriously at the prota, calling him up for his turn, while the onlookers around whisper in admiration at the high score. Yusung internally begs for her to stop the dispute, but Kumiko mentions she is highly curious to see his true strength. Despite him keeping up his pleas to stop the madness, the girls' cheering wins him over, and he ends up accepting the challenge. He thoughtfully cracks his knuckles and begins to prep, mentally questioning how things got so wildly out of hand. The young man takes on an extremely focused expression, thinking to himself that the final score is actually the least of his concerns right now. He reflects on the colossal physical strength of his body, which seems to possess an unbelievable power buff in this fantasy-like world. The prota fears that if he throws a punch with all his genuine strength, he will end up shattering the entire testing machine into a million pieces. With few alternatives left but to strike, he decides to go all out once and for all to put an end to this crazy competition. He reasons that if the machine is bound to break from the impact anyway, it is much better for the destruction to look spectacular. The young man charges with extreme speed and delivers a devastating power punch directly against the frame of the testing machine. Shinjiro watches his opponent's attack with crossed arms, anxiously waiting to see the result of his rival's strike. He goes into absolute shock upon realizing that Yusung struck and dented the machine's iron frame instead of hitting the soft punching bag. Due to the young man's colossal aiming error, the digital score display simply fails to register anything, showing a big fat 0 on the screen. His rivals start mocking him, saying he missed the target completely, while he stays quiet, trying to hide his true intentions. He breathes a sigh of relief for not shattering the entire machine, and decides to just play dumb, pretending he messed up his swing. However, looking closer at the top of the frame, the Prota notices something highly bizarre happening to the arcade cabinet, out of nowhere. The entire upper section of the punching machine snaps off the iron base and crashes loudly straight onto the floor. A dead silence takes over the entire arcade as everyone stares at the wrecked machine component on the floor, completely in disbelief. Breaking out in a cold sweat at that terrifying display of raw power, the butler quickly decides to suggest calling the dispute a draw. For today, he nervously yells that he will win next time and backs off, while the Prota feels relieved for surviving that absolute mess. To calm things down after the noisy incident, the scene now focuses on the entrance of a fun instant photo booth. He suggests that the whole group take some photos together as a special keepsake of the fun outing they had today. Kumiko loves the idea and excitedly agrees, commenting that capturing this special moment in the booth sounds like a total blast. The young man invites everyone to cram into the photo booth right away to start striking some fun, casual poses. Inside the compact booth, the four friends crowd close together and strike hilarious poses for the instant camera lens. The printed photo strip comes out, revealing highly comical and relaxed moments of all of them sporting ridiculous props. Minami praises the excellent final result of the pictures, while her brother angrily complains about blinking in one of them, holding the photos affectionately. Kumiko flashes a radiant smile and admits she found the experience incredibly fun and special. The young man watches her, glad to see her so happy, and suggests they wrap up the outing by doing a fun round at a karaoke box. Once in the music lounge, Shinjiro takes the mic, singing with every bit of breath he has left while the young man hits the tambourine to back him up. Kumiko also takes over the vocals, letting out her voice in an extremely sweet and graceful melody, enchanting everyone in the room under the flashing lights. Next, she and the Prota share the mics to sing a beautiful duet together, smiling happily throughout the entire song. As night falls over the bustling city, Yusung says goodbye to his friends, warmly wishing them a safe trip back home. From inside the car, the young woman thanks him, saying she had a wonderful time, while her two staff members look completely wiped out in the back. The two servants look at each other with pale, exhausted faces, thinking about how they truly gave it everything they had to make the day succeed. Minami takes the initiative and sincerely apologizes to her boss for all the unexpected slip-ups and interruptions during the outing. She regrets that they got so carried away having fun that they missed the chance to leave the two of them alone like they originally planned. The young woman listens to her servant's explanations in silence, wearing a calm and thoughtful expression on her face as the vehicle moves forward. Suddenly, she flashes an extremely sweet and gentle smile, revealing that there is absolutely no need for them to stress over, that Kumiko affectionately reassures them it is totally fine, confidently asserting that she had more than enough fun during today's outing. She looks back with immense fondness on the brand new feeling of waiting for someone and sharing that delicious matcha ice cream with the young man. She also remembers all the casual laughs and fun conversations they shared while picking out outfits at the traditional clothing store. She gazes at the developed photo strip in her hands and reflects that every little moment of that day left her immensely happy and fulfilled. She realizes it has been ages since she had this much fun in the company of her two childhood best friends and loyal protectors. With a sincere look, she thanks Shinjiro and Minami from the bottom of her heart for their constant loyalty and for always standing by her side through thick and thin. The young mistress lowers her head gratefully, leaving both servants deeply moved and choked up by her beautiful gesture. They cry tears of pure emotion upon hearing that today will become a treasured memory for their boss, swearing eternal loyalty to her. Crying out loud and holding her hands, the two fervently declare they will faithfully serve her for the rest of their lives. With the absolute greatest joy in the world, Kumiko tells them to calm down and reminds them that this won't be their last shot, demanding that next time they help her out the right way without any screw-ups. As the car drives away down the avenue into the night, the servants excitedly yell that they will do whatever it takes to guarantee the success of the next date. Far away from there, in a dark home office, an artist with his hair tied back works intently at his drawing tablet. Sketching a brand new piece of art, Rika excitedly slides the bedroom door open and calls out for her dad with a giant smile plastered across her face. She asks if he managed not to forget that her friend is coming over to visit them tomorrow, and he guarantees he remembers perfectly well. Her dad smirks slightly and comments that he is also pretty anxious for this meetup. He mentions he really wants to meet the guy she keeps talking about non-stop, this Kim Yoo-sung fellow. On the second day of the holiday break, Yoo-sung arrives at Rika's house and runs straight into her dad waiting by the front gate. The prota is caught completely off guard and starts breaking out in a cold sweat seeing the man right there in front of him. Yoo-sung bows with deep respect and greets the famous author, who finds amusement in the young man's old-school visual. The young man can barely believe he is standing face-to-face with the legendary creator of his absolute favorite manga. To him, that man is straight up the legendary manga god and the mastermind behind Golden Samurai. The author invites the young man inside, mentioning that his wife prepared a special feast to welcome him. Rika's sweet mother greets him with a warm smile and immediately tells him to take a seat before the food gets cold. Yoo-sung is left completely wide-eyed at the sheer amount of delicious high-end dishes laid out across the table. The whole family gathers around the table, and the young man politely thanks them for the wonderful meal, right in the middle of dinner. Rika's dad casually comments that his daughter hasn't stopped talking about him lately. He explains that he really wanted to meet him, given that this is the very first time his daughter has ever gotten this close to a guy. Feeling the atmosphere get a little tense, the prota decides he needs to clear up any potential misunderstanding right away. He explains that the two of them are just good friends, while Rika chews out her dad for making things so incredibly awkward. The man confesses he was worried since he is her first guy friend, but adds that he knows any father would feel the exact same way. Hearing that, Yoo-sung starts thinking about how he would react if he were in the author's shoes. He reflects that if he had a daughter as cute as his friend, he would also view any other guy as an absolute threat. Rika remains bright red from embarrassment and complains to her dad again for spouting that kind of nonsense. The young man tries to nod along in a friendly way to ease the tension, but the two end up staring at each other awkwardly. Rika asks why on earth he is looking at her like that, and the prota quickly darts his eyes away. She gets even more annoyed by the commentary and asks everyone to stop saying embarrassing things at the dinner table. The girl's parents watch the scene happily, commenting on how much their daughter has truly grown up and matured. Her dad smiles nostalgically, remembering back when he thought his daughter would stay a little kid forever. He recalls when little Rika would run happily around the house clutching her favorite stuffed bunny back then. She used to say with total childhood innocence that she was going to grow up and marry her own dad. Snapping back to the present, the author comments that he heard the young man is a massive fan of his stories. He asks if the young man would like to tour his studio after they finish eating, leaving the kids super hyped. Yoo-sung is absolutely thrilled at the chance to see the studio and score an autograph, thinking to himself that he could die happy right now. He states that he is the artist he respects most in the entire world, and Rika laughs at her friend's insane hype. Before heading to the studio, the young woman opens the door to her own bedroom and showcases her space to the guest. The prota is highly impressed by the number of shelves, saying the place looks like a literal manga library. Rika mentions she is going to grab some snacks and tea from the kitchen and asks her friend to wait there for just a few minutes. She peeks back through the crack in the door and playfully warns him not to touch anything while she is out. Left alone in the room, the young man realizes that this is the very first time he has ever stepped foot inside a girl's bedroom. He decides to pull his phone out of his pocket to play a quick game and distract his mind so he doesn't start thinking weird things. Out of nowhere, Rika's mom pops the door open by surprise with a huge grin, startling the young man with her sudden arrival. He greets her politely, but she gently asks to just be called by her first name, Maria. The young man feels a bit awkward with the immediate familiarity, but asks what brings her in, and she reveals she came to show off her daughter's past. With a playful air, the woman holds up a large brown notebook containing Rika's entire childhood photo album. She starts flipping through old photos from back when her daughter was just a baby, leaving the guest pretty curious. Next, she finds a special photo from when she took her daughter to the famous pop culture convention called Comiket. Maria reveals she used to do cosplay, and the young man reflects that a passion for this stuff must run in the family bloodlines. Suddenly, the mother excitedly announces she has finally uncovered the true, darkest secret from the girl's past. The photo reveals Rika dressed in a highly dramatic gothic style, striking a classic anime character pose. Right at that exact second, Rika returns to the room and lets out a frantic scream upon seeing her mom holding the photo album. She asks with a trembling voice if her mom seriously just showed him that, and the woman confirms it all with total casualness. The young woman screams from pure embarrassment, while the prota realizes just how long she has been deeply passionate about this universe. Rika rushes over frantically and swears she doesn't do cosplay anymore, explaining that it was just an embarrassing phase from her early teens. Her mom walks away chuckling and tells them to have fun, while Rika angrily yells at her to not you dare come back in here. With Maria gone, an incredibly awkward silence fills the room as the two sit on the floor, completely lost for words. She asks her friend to keep this an absolute secret, and he agrees, mentioning that he wouldn't even have anyone to tell anyway. Rika pouts, looking visibly embarrassed by the entire awkward situation. The prota tries to calm her down, telling her in a very friendly way that she shouldn't feel so deeply embarrassed over those photos. He comments that everyone goes through a cringe phase in their teens, but she quickly fires back, asking if he ever did anything like that. Scratching his cheek sheepishly, the young man admits that back in middle school, things were looking pretty rough on his end too. He asks if she wants to see a photo from back then, and the girl vigorously nods her head, looking highly curious. Yusung quickly scrolls through his phone until he finally locates the old picture he was searching for. He holds out his phone, showing the screen to his friend, who gets a total shock upon seeing the young man's old look. With her eyes wide from pure shock, she can barely even string a sentence together facing what is displayed on the screen. The photo shows a young Yusung decked out in leather clothes covered in studs, striking super over-the-top poses like a gothic rock star. She comments on how skinny and cute he used to be in the past, and wonders how on earth he ended up getting this ripped nowadays. The young man explains that he felt he was way too weak and lacked masculinity, which is why he decided to start training heavy before entering high school. Rika lets out a relaxed laugh and asks if she would have met that skinny version of him if she had transferred schools sooner. She suddenly blurs out that she really likes him exactly the way he is right now, leaving the prota completely stunned by the statement. Realizing what she just said without thinking, the girl instantly covers her mouth, turning as red as a tomato. The young man observes her closely, feeling the mood shift, and calls out her name in a very soft, confused tone. With their hearts beating incredibly fast, the two just sit there frozen on the bedroom floor, staring into space from pure awkwardness. Desperate to fix the situation, the young woman loudly yells that she meant she likes him just as a great friend. The young man smirks and agrees somewhat awkwardly, repeating to himself that they are just good buddies. The two start laughing loudly in a highly forced way to try to completely dispel the bizarre vibe that had settled over the room. A short while later, the prota addresses her in a calmer, more serious tone, causing her to look straight at him. He truly thanks her for the invite to her house, since he finally got to meet the great master and score an autograph. The young man says today will be a treasured memory for the rest of his life. While she insists he doesn't need to thank her for that at all, she says with a beautiful smile that he is always more than welcome there, and that the doors to her house will always be wide open. The young man happily accepts the invite and promises he will definitely be back soon for another fun visit. Time flies by and the sky already begins to take on a beautiful orange hue as the sunset draws to a close. The young man mentions he has been there for quite a while and needs to head out so he can have a peaceful dinner at his own place. Rika suddenly remembers that the young man is going on a family trip out of the country tomorrow and asks where they are heading. She warns him that they are about to go a whole week without seeing each other and tells him to make sure to pack plenty of sunscreen for the beach. The young man acts highly protective and tells her to call him if she ever needs any help, even if he is on the other side of the ocean. He grows reflective and comes to the conclusion that, with his insane physical build, swimming all the way to Hawaii actually seems almost doable. Right after, he dismisses the crazy idea and jokes that it is much easier to just dip into his savings to buy a plane ticket. The girl gives a highly affectionate wave and says goodbye, saying they will meet up again the moment classes start back up. The young man returns Rika's warm smile and walks back home, thoroughly satisfied with the excellent day they spent together. The scene cuts to a flashback of when they first discovered they lived incredibly close to each other, just a few train stations apart. It also shows the day they ate lunch together on a park bench, and she thanked him for enjoying the simple food she had packed. So much Rika remembers how the young man gave everything he had to help Karen in the past, proving to be someone truly selfless. She recalls the comforting feeling of when he shielded her right in the middle of a rowdy crowd and held on to her incredibly tight. He affectionately begged her to hang in there a bit longer through the heavy crowd squeeze, making her heart beat even faster. The young man gripped her hand tightly so they wouldn't lose each other and could run together down the street without any issues. Back in the present, Rika watches the young man's silhouette fade down the sidewalk, feeling something highly special blooming in her chest. 3 days flash by quickly, and the scene now shifts to the bustling, famous district of Akihabara on the 5th day of the holiday break. The prota strolls peacefully down the busy street, thoroughly satisfied that he managed to buy all the new manga volumes he wanted. With his shopping all wrapped up, he starts feeling a bit hungry and decides to look for a nice, quiet spot to grab a meal. The young man thinks about hitting up his usual favorite ramen joint when he suddenly hears the sound of rapid footsteps right behind him. A female voice frantically yells for him to get out of the way immediately, drawing the attention of everyone on the busy sidewalk. Yusung looks over in confusion and comes face to face with a girl leaping high into the air straight toward him, coming down at an absurd angle. The mysterious girl suddenly crashes right on top of him and frantically begs him to keep quiet. In the impact of the unexpected fall, he ends up catching a glimpse of something he shouldn't have and gets completely flustered. The prota's nose starts bleeding from sheer embarrassment, making him wonder if he somehow stumbled into some cliché rom-com plotline. He quickly snaps back to reality and realizes that this is definitely not the right time to be standing around thinking about that kind of nonsense. The young woman merely grumbles with disdain, leaving the young man pretty annoyed at not receiving even a basic thank you. Out of nowhere, a group of guys in suits come sprinting around the corner, screaming out the name Sasha, putting them both on high alert. With zero time to give a detailed explanation, the girl grabs Yusung's hand and begs for his immediate help. The young man stops her from running any further in that direction, warning her that the path she chose is a total dead end. He takes the lead in their escape and tells her to quickly follow him down a much safer shortcut to lose the men. The two duck inside Yusung's favorite ramen restaurant to try to hide from their pursuers. Crouched down inside the establishment, they watch in silence as the suits sprint right past the street outside. Relieved that they weren't spotted, the two take a deep breath while trying to catch their breath after running so hard. The girl stands up a bit sheepishly, smoothing out her skirt and trying to act natural in front of the young man. She finally thanks him for the valuable help, and the prota demands to know once and for all why she was being hunted down. Sasha suggests they take a seat first, introduces herself, and asks for the young man's name, to which he replies, his name is Kim Yusung. She is surprised to discover he isn't Japanese, and Yusung explains that he is actually a second-generation Korean. The young man loses his patience and tells her not to dodge the core question about who those people chasing her were. Facing her refusal to answer, he stands up and says he is leaving, wishing her the best of luck on her escape. The young woman complains, saying basic manners dictate helping a pretty girl first and saving the questions for later. As a last resort to make him stay, Sasha reaches into her bag and offers him a massive stack of cold, hard cash. She flashes gigantic bricks filled with high-denomination bills, leaving the young man completely shell-shocked by such immense wealth. Yusung accepts the deal on the spot, and the two shake hands, though she grumbles that in the end, cash solves everything. Seeing that he is now on her side, the girl decides to take off her hat and start spilling the absolute truth about herself. She lets down her long, flowing blue hair, revealing a highly striking and brilliant visual. Sasha reveals that her dad is an extremely important and powerful figure in a highly influential place called Luxia. She confesses with a sad look that those mysterious suits were actually trying to kidnap her right off the street. The prota is completely floored to recognize that she is the exact match for one of the main heroines from his favorite dating sim game. A little later, the two step into a clothing store to switch up her look and prevent her from being easily recognized. She steps out of the fitting room sporting a highly modern sporty style with a baseball cap and jacket. Asking what he thinks of the disguise, the young man praises the choice of more comfortable clothes, and she stipulates that his mission will be to protect her until 7 o'clock tonight. She guarantees that after that hour, she can handle everything on her own and asks if there is any fun place to hang out around here. The young man thinks the idea is absurd, since she is actively being hunted, but she counters that it is way easier to lose them in a crowd. He ends up agreeing with Alexandra's smart argument, also known by her nickname, Sasha, and decides to tag along. She is a girl of Russian descent who is a massive hit in the romance game franchise she originates from. Normally, she was supposed to cross paths with the story's official main character, but fate made her bump into Yusung first. The young man starts wondering if this whole mess is unfolding prior to her official debut in the main timeline. He doesn't know for sure why she is being chased right now, nor if he should even be interfering this directly. The young man recalls how he thought about giving her a stern lecture for trying to buy him out using all that cash on the table. That was what he would have loved to say to maintain his dignity, but the amount offered was simply way too high to pass up. He lets out a long sigh and decides to focus strictly on surviving the next 6 hours of work, guarding the girl. Meanwhile, Sasha watches him out of the corner of her eye with a mischievous smirk, deeply trusting her ability to read people. She remembers when he carried her with immense ease and realized right off the bat that this guy was incredibly powerful. The girl is completely certain that he will be able to hold his own and shield her from any danger without any issues at all. Yusung warns her that it is time for them to start moving, but suddenly, a loud shout giving orders from behind cuts off their conversation. One of the thugs points in their direction and orders them to be captured, leaving the Prota highly annoyed that they were found so fast. The two start sprinting at high speed, while Yusung tries to guess if the pursuers are elite former secret agents. While running, the Prota is caught completely off guard by a massive man in a black suit who blocks his path out of nowhere. The opponent throws an incredibly fast and heavy punch toward the young man, who scrambles to dodge his face out of the way with his absurd reflexes. The Prota manages to block and firmly lock down the attacker's arm before getting hit. The young man looks back on high alert, while Sasha stands completely shell-shocked witnessing that rapid display of raw power. Yusung quickly pulls open a red telephone booth and tells the girl to get inside immediately to stay hidden there. He shuts the booth door to keep her safe while bracing himself alone to face the rest of the thugs. The Prota reflects that the man he just blocked is operating on a completely different combat level. The young man realizes these guys are far more dangerous than the typical street punks he usually goes up against. However, he knows that unfortunately for those thugs, their luck just took a major turn for the worse at this exact moment. The Prota jumps into the fray thinking that in rom-com stories, the character with the bigger build always takes the win. He starts landing pinpoint strikes and knocks out several opponents all at once, leaving them strewn across the pavement. He braces himself to keep fighting, but the remaining thugs notice his absurd strength and quickly choose to fall back. In that split second of distraction, Captain Boris drops in out of nowhere and lands an incredibly fast surprise strike against the young man. Yusung gets pretty irritated at getting blindsided by an opponent as relentless and powerful as this guy Captain Boris resets into a confident stance, proving he is a highly experienced and lethal fighter. The man in the suit glares at the young man, surprised he blocked the strike, while Yusung notes he is tougher than he looks. Even so, the Prota stands his ground and begins analyzing his opponent to cook up a quick combat strategy. He comically wonders to himself if this rival is also going to drop before his absurd rom-com character strength. Inside the phone booth, Sasha watches everything anxiously. Thinking to herself that it doesn't matter how strong the young man seems, she firmly believes it is impossible for any ordinary teenager to take down a seasoned professional combatant like Boris. On the flip side, the Prota flashes a smirk and reflects that he should never underestimate the wallets of rich girls ever again. Determined to end this mess once and for all, the kid completely locks in and gets dead serious in the fight. He charges at blinding speed toward the captain. Determined to wrap up this bout as fast as humanly possible, Captain Boris goes wide-eyed with pure shock seeing the unbelievable speed at which the kid suddenly materializes right in front of him. With a rapid and pinpoint movement, the Prota ducks the attack and applies a powerful hold to completely immobilize his rival. He locks down the man's arm with extreme force, completely preventing him from moving or attempting any sort of counterattack. Yusung uses his combat technique to twist his opponent's joints with ease, forcing him straight down onto the pavement. The captain lets out a loud scream of pain and agony as he feels the absurd pressure being applied directly to his joints. He tries to resist in every way possible, but realizes the physical strength of this young man is something completely off the charts. The man begins to panic as he realizes he is completely trapped with zero chance of escaping that painful lock. The kid uses his entire body weight to pin his rival's limbs to the ground. Executing a flawless joint submission, Boris screams in rage over being dominated by such an efficient joint lock, executed by a mere kid. He complains about intense pain in his hip, while feeling his joints being pushed right to the absolute breaking point. The captain accuses the young man of trying to cripple him, but Yusung simply ignores the shouting and locks down the final hold with one final burst of strength. The young man slams his opponent violently straight against the asphalt sidewalk. The man in the suit collapses completely unconscious on the ground, finally defeated and in no condition to keep fighting. The Prota casually complains about the risk of joint injuries and wonders who would cover his gym membership if he got hurt. Sasha slowly pushes open the phone booth door, staring at the scene completely stunned, unable to believe Boris was actually defeated. She watches the young man walk away with an intimidating aura and wonders how an ordinary person can possibly be this powerful. Far away from there, Minami makes a confidential phone call, quickly reporting that Captain Boris has been defeated. The man on the other end of the line finds that news simply impossible, asserting that no fighter in Japan should be able to best him. She describes the physical features of the young man with black hair and sharp eyes, causing the man on the phone to grow highly suspicious. With an apprehensive look, the man wonders if the mysterious individual behind that beatdown is the legendary Black Yasha in a secret chat room. Urgent and rapid rumors start popping up. Questioning if the Black Yasha has truly resurfaced, another user confirms the story that something massive just went down in Akihabara and that the rumors have already spread across Tokyo. Multiple messages debate whether this legendary underworld information broker is truly that powerful, or if he is just an urban legend. Kumiko watches the discussion on her computer screen with disdain, thinking about how these rookies know absolutely nothing at all. She recalls a legendary past fighting tournament called God of the Fist, which was organized back in the year 1999. It was exactly during this era that a mysterious masked warrior known as Fuma Kotaro appeared out of nowhere for the tournament. Despite fighting only a single time, Kotaro managed to make it all the way to the tournament's grand finals, becoming a true legend. She wonders if the recent rumors are real, and if this legendary warrior of the past has truly decided to return to action now. Determined to closely investigate this highly intriguing story, Kumiko puts on her dark jacket with absolute purpose. She steps out onto the busy city streets. Highly alert for any clue that might lead her straight to the legendary warrior's whereabouts, Kumiko stays locked in and promises herself she will uncover the absolute truth regarding the whereabouts and the secret of her own father. Upon entering the spot Sasha wanted to visit so badly, the two are warmly greeted by several maids at a maid cafe. The prota finds the whole thing extremely embarrassing and awkward, but deep down admits he secretly wanted to hear that welcome. He puts a hand to his forehead upon realizing her special spot was just one of these themed cafes, while she claims the visit is mandatory in Japan. One of the maids enthusiastically guides them to a reserved table and politely asks the two to get settled in to eat. The young man is in disbelief that they are sitting there playing ordinary tourists, but she guarantees they will be perfectly safe after the beating he gave the guards. Holding the menu completely decorated with hearts, he starts feeling a terrible, bizarre chill run down his entire spine. The young man comments on the danger of her showing her face on the streets and mentions they must have used an EMP to knock out the cameras. She explains that combat squads typically use that tactic to deactivate nearby electronic devices before moving in. Sasha reveals the acronym refers to a gigantic weapons manufacturer based out of Luxia, and he asks why such a powerful company would want to kidnap her. She repeats that she is the daughter of someone with an extremely high-influence position when they are interrupted by one of the staff members approaching the table. The cafe's star maid arrives excitedly serving the dishes, introducing herself while mimicking a cute kitten. Leaving the young man completely shell-shocked, Yusung realizes he is still not fully adjusted to this culture, while Sasha happily thanks her for the food served at the table. The maid asks him to wait just a second and warns him there is a mandatory ritual everyone has to perform before they can start eating. She orders the prota to repeat her cute gestures and words, leaving the kid desperate and completely lost on what to do at that moment. The staff member joins her hands to form a heart shape right in front of the food plate and gives the signal to start the performance. She strikes an extremely cute kitty pose, making the young man almost cough up blood from pure secondhand embarrassment. While Sasha thoroughly enjoys the show, Sasha and the maid demand that he also perform the exact same cute hand gestures, claiming that it is a non-negotiable rule of the cafe. Deeply embarrassed and with his face completely flushed red, the kid takes a deep breath and tries to work up the courage to just get it over with. He finally makes the heart sign with his hands and repeats the words with immense embarrassment, causing Sasha to burst out laughing and point at him. The server wishes them a good meal and heads off, leaving the prota looking totally depressed at the table while his friend keeps cracking up. Already completely mentally drained from so much embarrassment, the young man digs into his meal and admits it tastes surprisingly good. The sweet maid returns shortly after to ask with a smile on her face if the food was truly to their liking. She explains that there is a penalty rule for whoever loses the next little tabletop game. Holding up a headband with cute plush cat ears in her hand, the prota breaks into a cold sweat and begins to fear the absolute worst, staring at that plush accessory, while the server confirms the punishment rules. She reveals that the loser will have to wear the ears and end every single sentence by meowing like a cat until the next game round wraps up. The kid desperately asks if there is any other punishment option available, but his friend simply says all he has to do is win the card game to get off the hook. With zero other acceptable alternatives, the Prota decides to take this card match dead seriously to avoid the humiliating punishment. He holds his cards with trembling hands and fervently declares he is going to win no matter what, under the highly confident gaze of the girl. In the end, the young man wraps up losing and is forced to put the cat ears accessory on his head, turning completely red from pure embarrassment. Trembling with rage and humiliation, he demands to play one more round while meowing very softly, triggering an uncontrollable laughing fit in Sasha. She mocks him, saying that cute cat look doesn't match his muscular build at all, leaving the young man even more furious and irritated. After spending hours having a blast at the themed cafe, the two finally decide to take off, and the maids wave them goodbye happily. Sasha stretches, thoroughly content with the wonderful outing they had. While the kid bitterly laments failing to win a single game, he notices it is already almost 5 in the afternoon and asks if she is truly okay, not checking out other famous tourist spots around the city, walking under the gorgeous evening sky. The blue-haired girl suddenly stops in her tracks and announces she needs to confess something serious to him. She reveals that the men in black suits he faced and knocked out on the street earlier were actually the bodyguards hired by her own father. The girl sincerely apologizes for lying and explains she only snuck out of the hotel to manage to sightsee around Japan a bit. She mentions he can head home in peace now, as she will take it upon herself to call security and return safely to the hotel. The young woman thanks him immensely for all his company today, flashing a radiant smile just as the loud rumble of an aircraft echoes. Out of nowhere, a loud, booming laugh echoes from above, and the man with the blue beard declares he finally managed to locate her after searching so hard. The Prota looks up totally startled and comes face to face with a massive combat helicopter hovering right above their heads on the street. The aircraft begins its noisy descent, kicking up a ton of dust and dry leaves from the ground as it prepares to touch down right nearby. The blue-bearded man steps down from the helicopter, ironically commenting on the messy escape attempt young Sasha tried to pull off today. He approaches, calling the girl his princess, and shoots a highly suspicious and intimidating glare toward Yusung, who stays completely quiet. The girl turns completely unstable and terrified, asking in a stuttering voice how on earth he managed to track them down with such ease. The imposing man in the leopard print coat approaches and firmly declares that this matter is a strictly personal family issue of his. He walks slowly toward the two young people, repeating that the matter in question solely involves the future of his beloved daughter. Sasha takes all the blame for the escape and begs her dad not to hurt her friend, but the man coldly states that that no longer matters. Hearing how the girl addressed the blue-bearded man, the Prota finally puts together that this intimidating guy is her actual father. Even right in the middle of the tense atmosphere, Yusung gets distracted by a silly question, wondering why a man coming from Luxia is speaking fluent Japanese here. Sasha looks confused when her father suddenly mentions he heard chatter about the reappearance of the legendary Black Yasha in Tokyo. Her father asks if she got involved with him, referring to the Japanese bodyguard he hired, leaving Yusung thoroughly confused. He comments that this mysterious combatant vanished right off the map without leaving a single trace 10 years ago. The man reveals the legendary identity of Fuma Kotaro. While the Prota keeps failing to understand anything about what he is talking about, Sasha's father enthusiastically shouts to finally finish the life-or-death battle they started 18 years ago. Analyzing the kid up close, the man asks who he truly is, and the Prota politely replies with his actual name. He questions if by any chance Yusung knows anyone named Fuma Kotaro, and the kid guarantees that this is the first time he has ever heard that name. A heavy silence takes over the spot as the man stares at him dead seriously to try to process that answer. He accepts the response and tells his daughter he will spare her from the punishment of being disowned for now, ordering the two to beat it. Relieved, the young man concludes it was all just a massive misunderstanding and that he must just look similar to this Kotaro guy. However, Sasha's father calls him back and straight up asks how an ordinary kid managed to completely demolish Captain Boris. Yusung remembers the massive guy he faced earlier and asks him to pass along his sincere apologies to the captain. The young man innocently explains that he thought the guy was a real kidnapper, which is why he ended up not holding back his strength. The man flashes back to the brutal knockout scene suffered by his best soldier and recognizes the absurd potential the kid possesses. He proudly flaunts his powerful scarred arm, showing that he respects the raw strength and drive of natural-born fighters. Sasha screams the Prota's name, looking highly worried as she senses that things are about to get dangerous real fast. The kid readies himself with a serious and defiant gaze, prepared to face any new threat that materializes right in front of him. The man finds that reaction extremely interesting and challenges the youth to showcase all of his genuine strength in combat. During the man's rapid blitz, the prota's backpack ends up getting ripped open, and his brand new manga volume drops straight onto the sidewalk. The young man starts crying tears of pure rage seeing his book treated with such utter disrespect and vows he will never forgive him. Sasha's father charges with impressive speed toward Yusung, officially kicking off a direct and violent clash. The prota reacts instantly, using his arms to block his opponent's devastating punch with extreme precision and firmness. The man backs off, thoroughly impressed by the flawless defense, while the kid fires back saying that was indeed pretty incredible. The young man irritatedly questions why he is attacking out of nowhere, all while dodging another dangerous blitz from his rival. The opponent replies he is doing it because the kid is a rare combat genius, leaving the youth even more confused and worked up. He highlights how unbelievable it is for an untrained student to take down his top soldier, using nothing but his bare hands. The two trade lightning-fast strikes in midair, and the man asserts that a massive feat like that should theoretically be impossible to pull off. He praises the young man, calling him a rare prodigy that typically only surfaces once every 100 years in the fighting world. The prota listens to the praise in silence, with a highly serious and locked-in expression while trying to catch his breath. The man channels a massive amount of concentrated energy into his fist and readies himself to deliver another devastating strike. The power blow is delivered with immense force and speed, generating a massive shockwave across the area from the heavy impact. The man firmly declares that he wants to help him develop and awaken all of this massive talent he possesses for fighting. At this exact moment of peril, the prota finally pieces together the truth behind the universe of the game he ended up reincarnating into. He realizes that this place is definitely not a simple, ordinary high school rom-com story. The kid notices that the man's proposition seems to have jumped straight off the pages of a classic battle-focused shonen manga. At the start, everything truly seemed to follow the cliché high school romance template, but now things have drastically shifted tiers. He reflects on the true reason he was brought to this world, and why he trained so hard to build this muscular physique. He also grasps the reason why he keeps getting wrapped up in so many fights and messes with dangerous people since his very first day of class. The young man concludes that his absurd physical strength wasn't just a running gag and that everything leading up to this point points to a single answer. He realizes his high school romance story has completely veered off course and transformed into a full-blown action and battle manga. The young man is absolutely certain of this, remembering that the publishing house responsible for the work is extremely famous for that exact genre. He knows that maintaining a pure romance story in a magazine famous for street fights would be a tough task with zero chance of mainstream success. He deduces the author must have caved to editorial pressure to shift the focus and inject action battles to boost their ranking positions. Thinking about this tragic possibility of a genre shift, the prota begins to foresee a highly complicated future ahead for himself. If this is indeed the case, he knows he will start being hunted down by insane fighters and that his own life will constantly be on the line. The imposing man in sunglasses and a blue beard stands still, calmly waiting for a definitive answer from the young man. He offers to cover all his school expenses, buy him a brand new house, and even an imported car if the young man agrees to work under his command. The prota breaks into a wide, defiant grin upon realizing that, by classic manga rules, that powerful opponent is totally doomed. He knows that, at the end of the day, powerful villains like him always end up completely demolished by the actual main character. With that in mind, the kid concludes that his best survival strategy is to stick as close as possible to the story's true hero. Sasha's father lets out a sigh of relief, glad to have finally sorted out the situation, and braces himself to take the next step. Kim Yu-sung gets highly indignant and yells, asking why on earth that man has to be so extreme about absolutely everything. Without giving him time to talk, the man rapidly advances and lands a heavy blow on the young man, who lets out a groan of pain. Feeling the violent impact of the attack, Yu-sung realizes with pure dread that his opponent is genuinely trying to kill him right here. The corporate boss advances again with bare hands, commenting that his initial intention was actually to go easy on the kid. Yu-sung manages to spot a gap in his opponent's guard and seizes the perfect moment to counterattack toward his head. However, the young man's punch barely tickles the man, who displays only a tiny scratch on his face along with a menacing glare. The prota grits his teeth in pure frustration upon realizing that his strongest strike barely dealt any damage to his rival. The seasoned warrior merely smiles and preps another relentless attack against the defenseless youth. The man locks down Yu-sung's arm with extreme firmness and warns him he is about to give him a highly valuable piece of combat advice. He squeezes his fist with all his might and explains that the moment you decide to throw a punch in someone's direction, the opponent radiates a stunning aura and says every single attack must always be executed with the genuine intent to kill. Immediately after, he lands a devastating blow right into Yusung's side. The imposing man stands tall with his fists glowing with purple energy, showcasing an overwhelming physical superiority. Completely spent, Yusung drops to his knees on the ground while desperately trying to recover his lost breath. The young man reflects that he only managed to survive that brutal blitz because he was fast enough to deflect his rival's hand. Even so, the Prota remains confused and rattled, trying to figure out what kind of absurd technique he just faced. The boss of the EE smiles proudly and reveals that the name of that mysterious strike is the Emperor's Double Eagle. Yusung goes into total shock at the revelation and asks with a cold sweat what exactly he meant by that. The man explains that it is a secret imperial martial art belonging to the Romanov family, known as the Two-Headed Eagle. Without wasting any time, the martial arts master advances once more and lands a rapid sequence of strikes on the Prota. Yusung tries to defend himself as best he can, but realizes in despair that his eyes cannot even keep up with that sheer speed. Desperate from the sheer violence of the brawl, Sasha runs toward them, screaming for her dad to stop this immediately. The man tells his daughter not to meddle in the discussion and shouts that he is taking this young man with him one way or another. Despite being heavily battered and exhausted, Yusung refuses to back down and raises his fists again to keep fighting. The leader proposes that the kid join his ranks if he wants to survive, promising to personally teach him every technique he knows. He praises the youth's natural durability for tanking attacks that his elite soldiers would never survive, promising to grant him more power. Yusung finds it ridiculous to receive an offer like that after nearly getting killed, and realizes this man is living in a total fantasy world. The Prota flashes a smirk and begins to deliver a highly resolute response to the powerful opponent's invitation. He remembers all the cherished people he met in this new world and concludes it makes zero sense to abandon everything for that offer. With pure determination locked in his eyes, Yusung charges all out and yells that he has absolutely no reason to accept that absurd proposition. The kid tells the man to just give up already, but his rival merely finds the powerful conviction displayed by the young student. Admirable, the leader of Luxia, readies his fist and asserts that he will make it a point to break all of this beautiful determination of the Prota. He shouts that he is going to crush the young man's willpower, while Sasha watches the scene in a state of total shock. The two powerful fighters clash fists once again in the middle of the street, generating a massive flash of energy from the impact. Yusung feels the full weight of the devastating blow strike his face and lets out another groan of pain as he gets shoved backward. The force of the impact is so brutal that the youth ends up being blasted a few yards away by the relentless opponent. The Prota tries to hold his ground on his feet, but his body is already starting to show clear signs of extreme fatigue and physical exhaustion. Capitalizing on the kid's fatigue, the swift man reappears right in front of him to unleash yet another dangerous blitz. The seasoned warrior delivers another terrifying attack, creating a massive shockwave that breaks the pavement all around Yusung. He keeps up the pressure without offering the slightest window for recovery, showing he won't make things easy at all for the young student. In an extremely rapid movement, the man blitzes forward and grabs the collar of Yusung's jacket with ultimate ease. The Prota gets blasted with full power once again, completely failing to mount any sort of efficient defensive reaction. The young man spits blood and realizes in despair that this opponent is operating on a power tier far above Captain Boris Flord on the ground before his powerful rival. Yusung finally understands what it truly means to face the strongest warrior of all head-on. Sasha can no longer bear to watch that unnecessary violence and frantically screams for her father to halt the slaughter. The girl steps right in front of her dad and complains that the kid was only protecting her, but the man coldly orders her to step aside. Sasha refuses to budge from her friend's side, leaving her father highly irritated by that act of direct disobedience. Losing his patience for any more arguments, the leader of Luxia lands a swift strike to the back of his own daughter's neck to knock her out. Sasha drops unconscious into her father's arms, while Yusung watches the entire cruel scene unfold, completely lacking the strength to stand up. Yusung indignantly questions if the man truly possesses zero mercy, even for his own daughter when she gets in the way of a fight. The young man tries to get to his feet with great difficulty, while Sasha remains collapsed on the ground right beside him. Sasha's father looks coldly at the kid and tells him he talks too much, deciding it is time to wrap everything up once and for all. The relentless leader of Luxia readies his glowing fist and strikes with full power to deliver the final mercy blow. The giant fist drives toward the Prota, but something unexpected slices through the air and halts the blitz at the very last split second. The man is caught completely off guard, feeling a blade graze past his face, forcing him to abort the strike immediately. Several sharp kunai rain down from the sky and embed themselves into the pavement right between the two fighters, creating a protective barrier on the spot. Both Yusung and his opponent are left totally confused and surprised by that sudden interference in the battle. Sasha's father recognizes the weapons on the sidewalk and realizes with a jolt that those are the famous throwing knives of the legendary Black Yasha out of nowhere. A sharp wire grazes the man's cheek, leaving him even more surprised and on high alert. Fuma Yukika drops in from above in spectacular fashion, advancing with speed and determination to strike the imposing boss of Luxia. She lands gracefully between the two and snaps into a combat stance to shield Yusung from any further violent attacks. Yusung looks highly surprised at the purple-haired girl and immediately recognizes her as his school upperclassman. The newcomer is introduced as Fuma Yukika, the interim leader of the 17th generation of the prestigious Fuma ninja clan. The young man gets pretty confused and asks why on earth his dear upperclassman just materialized in such a dangerous spot out of nowhere. The leader of Luxia looks at the young ninja and brings up the name of Fuma Kotaro, the legendary warrior he had been searching for so heavily. Yukika reveals that this mysterious warrior is her father, but mentions he left the village 10 years ago and they have lost all contact since then. The man listens to the revelation in silence and comments that he had already heard some interesting rumors regarding that old story. He concludes the rumors about the daughter of the legendary Black Yasha were true and finally puts together that girl's identity. Without wasting a moment, Yukika hands a glowing golden pill over to Yusung and orders the young man to swallow the medicine as fast as possible. She explains that it is a secret pill from her family that will help him awaken and unleash all the hidden power he possesses. Sasha's father advances irritatedly and warns them he isn't going to just stand around watching the two of them plot something against him. Yukika yells for Yusung to take the medication right away and guarantees she will hold off the dangerous enemy until he is completely ready. Trusting his ally, the Prota swallows the golden pill in one gulp, merely hoping that this won't end up taking his life. Right after swallowing the secret medicine, the kid feels a violent reaction and snaps his eyes open, startled by the bizarre sensation inside his body. He panics as he feels an unbearable, overwhelming heat burning intensely through all of his internal veins. Yusung lets out a groan of pure pain while Sasha watches the scene from a distance, extremely worried about the young man's state. The kid's chest begins to glow intensely in shades of gold and deep red, looking as if a massive bonfire is blazing inside him. Unable to contain the absurd energy, Yusung lets out a powerful roar as a massive explosion of flames completely consumes his body. The sudden display of power leaves the boss of Luxia and the young Yukika completely shell-shocked by the intensity of that force. Yusung's clothes are partially shredded by the golden flames that wrap around his muscular physique with a brilliant aura. The Prota squeezes his fist firmly and feels as if something highly powerful is finally being unlocked deep inside himself. He opens his eyes, which are glowing with energy, and realizes that an inexplicable spiritual force has just flooded his entire body. The young man reflects that it feels as if a third spiritual eye is opening in his mind, completely shifting his perception. He stares closely at his opponent and senses an absurd amount of unknown energy radiating from both himself and his rival. Yukika watches in shock, realizing the pill's effect was even greater than she anticipated, completely unlocking the boy's energy pathways. However, she grows worried, remembering that the special medicine's effect only lasts for about 5 minutes inside his body. She wonders if that time window will be enough. While Sasha's father enjoys the situation, praising the mysticism of the East Yusung is highly impressed to be channeling this much power, and tells his rival that he finally understands what kind of person he truly is. The young man declares with a serious gaze that his opponent is nothing but a terrible, irredeemable villain for attacking his own daughter. The leader of Luxia merely lets out a low grunt and seems to care absolutely zero about the young student's harsh words. Right after, he begins to let out a loud, mocking laugh of pure amusement at the Prota's serious threat. He points a finger at Yusung and coldly asserts that moral speeches of that kind are just excuses used by the weak. The man continues, stating that the natural law of the world is for the strong to strip away the freedom of the weak to prove their power. With that, he challenges Yusung to try to defeat him right then and there if he wants to prove his worldview is completely wrong. The The powerful leader summons the intimidating aura of a massive white energy tiger around himself and says the young man will only win if he is capable. In the blink of an eye, the imposing man launches himself forward and throws an incredibly fast punch right toward the prota. The two start trading lightning-fast strikes in midair, and Yusung notices that his opponent's strength and speed remain completely absurd. The seasoned martial arts master wears a satisfied smile, seeing that the kid is finally managing to keep pace with his rhythm. Thanks to the power of the secret pill, Yusung happily notices that he can now see and dodge the lightning-fast attacks with total clarity. The combat intensifies in spectacular fashion, with the two trading rapid attacks wrapped in glowing energy auras. To his own surprise, Yusung notices that he can finally perfectly read and anticipate every single one of his rival's movements. Focusing his entire attention on the fight, the youth catches the perfect opening and decides that now is the exact time to strike. He dodges masterfully and preps a devastating punch, driving all out straight through the powerful opponent's guard. The kid lands a punch squarely on the man's face, leaving the leader of Luxia completely dazed from the brutal impact. The force of the impact is so monstrous that the seasoned warrior's feet slide backward, dragging across the pavement. He is left in complete shock, totally unable to believe he is being shoved back and dominated by the attack of a mere high schooler. Without giving his enemy a single breath, the prota continues his relentless sequence of heavy, pinpoint punches. The man tries to defend himself as best he can, but notices in surprise that the kid's movements have become infinitely sharper. He wonders if all that terrifying evolution is due to the strange pill the young man swallowed moments prior. Refusing to accept defeat, the warrior unleashes the Emperor's Griffin technique, swearing he would never be bested by a high school kid. The boss of the EE lets out an infuriated roar while channeling all his remaining energy to deliver his most powerful strike. He charges toward Yusung with bloodlust, screaming for the kid to drop dead once and for all under this attack. The prota maintains his composure in the face of imminent danger and prepares to take on his opponent's final charge. He extends his arm and drives his fist with unbelievable strength, crashing his strike directly against the enemy's power. The leader of Luxia lets out an arrogant laugh and shouts that it is impossible for the youth to successfully block a strike of that caliber. He swears he will tear the prota's hands apart, using the strength of his talons as the two powers violently collide. However, Yusung shows zero concern and simply calmly agrees with his opponent's empty taunts. The young man locks in even further and tells the villain to hold on tight. Radiating a truly terrifying amount of energy, the hero's punch completely shatters his rival's defensive barrier, breaking the enemy attack with ultimate ease. Right after, Yusung lands a devastating kick that blasts his powerful opponent away, generating a massive shockwave. The seasoned warrior lets out a scream of pain, feeling the crushing force of the strike, and ends up falling completely knocked out cold. Yusung touches down on the ground in triumphant fashion, while the excess energy inside his body begins to slowly evaporate into the air. Collapsed on the ground and lacking the strength to respond, the leader of Luxia grumbles in disbelief, finding that defeat totally impossible. He cannot accept that he, Ivan Romanov, the supreme master hailed as the strongest man in the entire world, has lost. The proud warrior feels thoroughly humiliated to be defeated and outmatched in combat by a simple high school student. He closes his eyes in deep frustration, silently lamenting that things wrapped up in such a humiliating fashion. Yusung stands still watching his defeated opponent on the ground and lets out a heavy sigh as he begins to recover his breath. The prota approaches the fallen man and comments in a calm tone that he hates to ruin his whole dramatic moment. He reveals with a good-natured smile that, in reality, he isn't a Japanese student, but rather a proud Korean kid. Yukika and Sasha watch the outcome of that monumental battle wide-eyed, completely paralyzed with total shock and surprise. The victory belongs to Kim Yusung, who stands tall in imposing fashion after managing to overcome the most dangerous adversary of his life. The legendary undefeated champion and military corporate boss has just been completely knocked out cold and tossed humiliatingly onto the ground. Yukika admits, thoroughly impressed, that the young man truly managed to win, though she knows he merely capitalized on a gap in the fight. She wonders what the true limit of that youth's absurd strength actually is. While he wipes the sweat and grime from his face, Sasha runs frantically toward Yusung and asks with tear-filled eyes if he is truly okay after the combat. The prota apologizes to his friend for hurting her father, but she gently replies that doesn't matter at all. Yukika offers to clean up the mess at the scene and tells the boy to head out, leaving him a bit worried by that sudden kindness. Sasha guarantees her father won't die that easily and promises to reach out if she needs any help, telling the young man to go. However, before managing to take a single step, Yusung's body finally gives in to the extreme fatigue and he begins to tilt backward. Yukika catches him and mentions she is taking him out of there, telling Sasha to leave quickly before a crowd of onlookers starts to form. The hero finally manages to rest and falls asleep with an extremely serene and peaceful expression on his ninja upperclassman's shoulders. Sasha watches the two head off with a soft smile, while the local residents begin to gather all around her father. The people on the street start whispering in surprise upon recognizing the famous champion Ivan Romanov tossed humiliatingly on the sidewalk. A few days pass, the highly anticipated Golden Week finally draws to a close, and classes at the school return to their normal pace. Yusung wakes up feeling some aches across his body and softly grumbles while stretching his neck to relieve the heavy muscle tension. He walks down the school hallways thoughtfully, reflecting that he was incredibly lucky to have survived that massive mess. The young man finds it highly bizarre that, since that day, zero news or commentary regarding the monumental brawl has surfaced on the internet. He admits to himself that this absolute silence leaves him even more worried, but is interrupted by the teacher entering the classroom. The teacher asks for quiet and excitedly announces that the class will be welcoming a new transfer student straight from a school in Russia today. Suddenly, the classroom door slowly slides open and an enthusiastic, friendly voice greets everyone in the room. A beautiful girl with long, brilliant blue hair steps into the space, instantly capturing the attention of every single student. Yusung turns around to see who just walked in and goes into absolute shock upon recognizing the person standing right in front of him. The new student happily introduces herself as Alexandra Romanova and says in a friendly manner that everyone can just call her Sasha. The prota panics as he realizes his prediction was spot on and that the Russian girl has truly transferred to his school. Sasha shares a bit about her hobbies, such as horseback riding, reading manga, and watching anime, and reveals what she has recently started liking the most. She makes a dramatic pointing gesture across the room, leaving the students curious about that sudden attitude. To the prota's absolute despair, the new student points her finger directly at him and shouts out the name Kim Yusung. For the entire class to hear, Yusung freezes completely in pure panic and despair, totally unable to believe what he just heard right in the middle of the classroom. Ryuji Sakamoto cracks a fun smile and comments that this random declaration of love looks exactly like a classic scene out of a rom-com. The prota starts sweating bullets as he realizes his highly dreamed of peaceful life as a background character has just been wrecked yet again. With a bright, confident smile, Sasha keeps pointing at Yusung before the attentive and curious gazes of the entire classroom. The other students crowd around their new classmate, thoroughly impressed by the fact that she is Russian and asking how she learned to speak Japanese so well. Sasha sits surrounded by peers and happily explains she learned the language all on her own by watching a ton of anime since she was a kid. While the students chat, Tojo Karen approaches Yusung with a serious face and asks if the new girl's declaration was actually for real. Sasha enthusiastically replies that Yusung helped her out a ton and reveals that her ideal type of man has always been someone even stronger than her own father. The students start gossiping in shock about the other girls interested in Yusung and wonder if he truly fought against Sasha's dad. Yusung and Rika get extremely sweaty and nervous seeing that bizarre rumors and absurd gossip have already started spreading across the entire class. Kishimoto Rika looks out of the corner of her eye with a serious and thoughtful expression, trying to figure out what exactly is going on there. Rika nudges Yusung and jokes that he is fast, since all it took was her traveling for a short bit for him to score a foreign girlfriend. She complains that his response sounds just like a generic excuse from a rom-com main character, leaving Yusung completely lost for words. The young man reflects that Sasha should be focusing her attention on Sakamoto, the game's original hero, and not on a mere assistant like him. He worries that his minor tweaks to the original plot are shifting the course of things and killing his chances of ever having peace. At that exact moment, Rika and Yusung are interrupted by a familiar voice that happily calls out to them right in the thick of that classroom chaos. Tojo Karen surfaces wearing her athletic track jacket and announces with a radiant smile that she only came over to spend some time with her friends. Karen hugs Yusung from behind with a ton of familiarity, happily asking if her friend managed to properly enjoy the holiday break. Sasha does not like seeing that scene one bit and shoots a lethal, extremely jealous glare straight toward the red-haired girl. Without beating around the bush, the Russian girl points at Karen and coldly and directly requests her to step away from Yusung immediately. Karen gets extremely irritated by the newcomer's sheer nerve and yells, asking who she thinks she is to be bossing her around on their very first meeting. Sasha places a hand over her chest with superiority and prepares to deliver a definitive response to her fierce new rival. She proudly declares that she is the girl who is going to become Yoo-sung's girlfriend, leaving both the young man and Karen completely stunned. Karen's face turns completely red from embarrassment, and she screams indignantly, totally unable to accept that bold claim from the foreigner. She fires back by saying that Yoo-sung is already Rika's boyfriend, leaving the poor blonde girl completely shell-shocked and speechless in the classroom. The prota desperately tries to step into the argument, saying that everything is just a massive misunderstanding on all sides. Yoo-sung hits total despair, realizing he somehow became Rika's boyfriend without even noticing. Concluding that things are spinning wildly out of control, Rika turns red as a tomato and screams envergonhadamente that they have nothing of the sort and that she and Yoo-sung are just good childhood friends. Sasha wears a victorious smile upon realizing she had understood everything wrong and that the path to winning over the young man is completely clear. She celebrates by saying she can have Yoo-sung all to herself, causing Karen to lose her patience and tell her rival to settle this outside. In the middle of the girls' noisy brawl unfolding in the background, a young woman with glasses and braided pigtails calmly approaches Yoo-sung's desk to speak with him. The class representative, Ayase, politely asks if she can speak with him, and the prota responds nicely to the call. She explains she ended up getting distracted during class and asks to borrow his notebook notes for a moment. Yoo-sung readily agrees to the request and hands his notebook over to the representative with a friendly smile on his face. Ayase thanks him politely for the help and promises to return the notebook as soon as she finishes copying all the missed class material. Rika looks confused and comments that she thought the representative was a literal academic genius who would never need outside help. Karen agrees and questions why the top student is borrowing notes from Yoo-sung, given that he just looks like a muscle-bound meathead. The girls shoot suspicious looks at him and ask what his position is in the rankings, making the young man realize they all assumed he was dumb. Yoo-sung responds with total casualness that he is the #1 ranked student of the entire grade, leaving all the girls wide-eyed with sheer surprise. Their classmate, Momochi, surfaces laughing and comments that indeed the prota has the face of someone who would be terrible at academics in school. He gives a friendly slap to Yoo-sung's back and explains everyone would react that way if he hadn't entered as the school's #1 student. The girls take in the scene and realize Momochi holds zero fear of Yoo-sung because he knows that deep down he is an incredibly nice guy. The girls happily agree with Momochi, confirming that the prota is indeed a super gentle person once you get to know him for real. Yoo-sung gets pretty embarrassed by the sudden compliments and decides to head to the restroom to escape that uncomfortable situation. His friends keep teasing the young man as he walks away, laughing at the fact that he turned visibly red from shyness. He walks away thoughtfully and decides that the best strategy for today is to maintain a certain distance from Sasha and act low profile. Time flies by quickly, and the story now shifts straight to the school cafeteria, right at the highly anticipated lunch hour. To his misfortune, Yoo-sung ends up sitting at the exact same table as Sasha, Karen, and Rika, getting surrounded by the 3 girls once again. The boy gets extremely frustrated upon realizing his flawless plan of keeping his distance from the girls failed miserably. He tries to protest, saying that Sasha isn't his girlfriend, but the girls continue to completely ignore him and chat excitedly all around him. Meanwhile, the other students nearby start glaring at Yoo-sung with pure envy because he is having lunch with 3 gorgeous girls. The prota notices the angry glares and gossip from his peers and desperately tries to cook up a plan to break free from that situation. Suddenly, a genius idea strikes Yoo-sung's mind, bringing a smile of pure hope and malice to the young man's face. He casually mentions that midterms are right around the corner and asks if the 3 of them are actually studying and prepped for the exams. Rika looks totally deflated by the question and complains that he shouldn't be talking about boring exams right at lunchtime. The mood at the table completely shifts to a tone of pure depression, and the boy celebrates silently because his plan worked on the very first try. Rika lets out a deflated sigh while eating, deeply regretting not studying way harder over the previous days. Karen complains about history, and Sasha says she finds classical Japanese literature highly difficult, since it is written in a very ancient form of Japanese. Yoo-sung breaks into a satisfied grin, seeing their despair, and concludes that this is the perfect window to score his highly desired piece. He suggests the 3 of them form a study group to help one another out, and the girls absolutely love the idea, finding the proposal straight up. Genius Karen offers to host the study group at her house since she has plenty of empty rooms, even proposing a fun pajama party night. The prota feels overjoyed to have his weekend free of issues and wishes the 3 of them the best of luck with their studying and exams. The weekend finally arrives, and the scene now shifts directly to Kim Yoo-sung's cozy and quiet house. The young man lets out a sigh of pure relief to finally have some peace and quiet to focus on what he loves doing most in life. He celebrates excitedly seeing that his own private home gym is finally set up and ready to rock. The young man explains that he bought all the brand new weight training gear using the cash he received for guarding Sasha during Golden Week. Extremely hyped, Yusung lays down on the bench and decides to kick off his heavy workouts with his favorite exercise, the bench press. He begins lifting the weights with immense ease and lets out a joyful chuckle, feeling extremely good and refreshed. However, his workout gets cut off by the sound of the phone ringing, leaving him confused to be getting a call this early on a Saturday. Yusung answers and gets caught completely off guard by Rika, ordering him to look out his window immediately and asking if he is already fully ready. The youth opens the window in confusion, and Rika reminds him they had agreed yesterday to all head over together for the study group at Karen's house. The prota is left completely blank, while Rika happily yells from down on the street below to get his attention at the window. The blonde smiles and waves, telling him to hurry on down, but the young man notices there is a massive amount of terrifying men standing behind her. Yusung hits total terror and panic, seeing that huge crowd of muscular, stern-faced guys standing right on his sidewalk. He frantically yells out the window, asking who on earth all those terrifying, mean-looking men accompanying the girl are. Yusung stands completely shocked and utterly clueless, facing what he is witnessing right before his eyes. Rika tells him not to waste time and to just get in the car, while multiple terrifying bodyguards escort her. Peeking inside the vehicle, the prota comes face to face with a man covered in bandages across his head who greets him in Russian right on the spot. He recognizes the guy and remembers it was the exact man he himself defeated in a recent combat. Rika introduces the man, saying he is Boris, Sasha's uncle. Leaving Yusung even more surprised by the revelation, Rika explains that Boris doesn't speak Japanese, but guarantees he is a very nice person despite his intimidating appearance. Yusung asks in a low voice how that came about, and Sasha explains she needs Boris's presence since he is her bodyguard. Even so, the prota feels highly uncomfortable being in the same car as the guy he nearly completely dismantled days ago. They finally arrive at a beautiful traditional Japanese-style estate and are greeted by enthusiastic voices echoing from inside. Karen's father welcomes them with a massive smile and invites them in, while the red-haired girl herself gives them a warm welcome. Yusung notices he already knew her father from before, but decides to play dumb to avoid any awkward scenario. He bows politely and formally introduces himself as Kim Yusung, thanking him for the opportunity to be there. The man observes the youth with pride, thinking about how talented he is and how close he is to his daughter. He loudly praises Yusung, stating he is doing excellent as the future son-in-law and successor he has chosen. Suddenly, Karen's father looks closely at the driver and recognizes him, greeting him as Captain Boris after so much time. He comments in surprise about the fact that Ivan Romanov's daughter is studying at the same school and in the exact same class as Karen. Yusung looks confused, noticing they know each other, while Sasha also displays zero knowledge regarding this old relationship. Karen's father notices Boris's bandages and asks what could have happened for him to be this heavily battered. Without a second thought, Boris raises his hand and points his finger directly in one direction to deliver his answer. He reveals that all of his injuries were caused by Kim Yusung, leaving the young man completely startled by the direct accusation. The assistant in glasses translates Boris's words, and Rika screams in shock, completely unable to believe what she just heard. The translator adds that even the legendary Ivan Romanov was defeated by the youth. Leaving Karen's father in a state of total shock, Yusung falls into complete despair, thinking that everything is ruined now and that he will probably be kicked out of that house. But he quickly realizes that if he gets kicked out of there, he will finally score the chance to head home and train in peace in his gym. However, he gets caught completely off guard when Karen's father lets out an enthusiastic shout, saying that that is simply incredible. The man hugs the prota, laughing heavily, and confidently asserts that he is the absolute perfect son-in-law for his daughter. Karen turns extremely red from embarrassment and chews out her father, who apologizes, saying he accidentally just blurted out what he was thinking. After all that chaos and moments of pure tension, the prota finally manages to let out a long sigh of relief. The young man is left with his head spinning and complains about Boris's habit of reporting everything, while things slowly begin to calm down. With everyone properly settled around the table, Yusung decides it is time to organize things before they kick off their studying. He announces he will analyze each person's weak spots and starts with Rika, pointing out she needs to lock in on science formulas. The youth hands over a summary he prepped at his own house to help her easily memorize everything that will be on the test. He alerts the girls that the exam is incredibly close, demanding they stop fooling around and put in the effort to memorize it all. Next, Yusung calls out to Karen, who responds startled and stands at attention upon hearing her name announced for review. He explains her grades are strictly average across the board, but highlights that her greatest weakness is her massive difficulty in memorizing content. The young man suggests she try creating her own memorization method, and Karen accepts the advice excitedly, determined to put in the work. Filled with anticipation, Sasha smiles with a blushing face and asks what the prota prepped to help her with her studies. He warns her with total frankness that it will be tough for her to grasp the concepts right off the bat, and that repetition will be the only way Yusung hands over a study guide he had made for himself, and says the two of them will review all that content together. With all the guidance laid out, the group finally kicks off the long study session with great seriousness around the table. Just 1 hour after starting, the girls already begin displaying clear signs of fatigue and a total lack of focus. 2 hours flash by and productivity completely plummets, with Rika falling into a deep sleep directly on top of her study desk. Noticing that their focus is completely shot, Yusung decides to call for a break, triggering an immediate and highly joyful celebration from the girls. The prota capitalizes on the intermission to ask Karen if he can borrow her kitchen for a few moments, leaving her confused. He explains with a wide smile that he intends to whip up a special snack to restore the energy of everyone who studied so hard. Shortly after, the young man returns to the study room, bringing the surprise he prepped with a ton of care for his friends. He showcases a delicious, highly stacked shaved ice dessert, leaving the girls with their eyes shining from pure hunger. They look fascinated by the traditional Korean dish, praising the beauty and incredibly appetizing look of the icy treat. Yusung tells them to pick whichever flavors they prefer, and the girls quickly pull out their phones to snap pictures of that food. While everyone preps to dig in, Sasha stares intently at Yusung with a mysterious smile and calls out the young man's name. Sasha brings a spoon filled with the treat close and affectionately suggests they sample each other's food, leaving Yusung confused. The young man gets pretty flustered by the sudden situation and tries to politely decline, saying they don't need to do that. She insists, making a highly cute face, and complains that her arm is already tired from holding the spoon, pressuring him to give in. Having little choice, Yusung ends up taking the spoonful, while Rika and Karen watch the scene unfold in the background with expressions of pure fury. Sasha asks if it tasted good and requests him to do the same. While the vibe in the room gets extremely tense with the other girls' jealousy, Rika and Karen jump into the fray immediately and demand that Yusung also sample their treats, leaving the young man completely clueless on what to do. The two girls complain that the situation is highly unfair and start pressuring the prota to feed them without further delay. At that moment, Karen begins to reflect in silence and realizes she was a total fool for jumping to conclusions that the two were dating. She flashes back to a recent conversation where it was made clear as day that their relationship was nothing more than a simple, solid friendship. Realizing she was completely mistaken the whole time, an excited thought pops up in the redhead's mind regarding her own chances. She remembers with a ton of affection the exact moment in the past when she truly started falling for Yusung when he comforted her, armed with the certainty that they aren't together. Karen fills up with determination and steps forward even more resolutely to offer her own treat to him. The red-haired girl turns completely flushed, but maintains her focus, thinking she still has a genuine opportunity to win the young man's heart. Some time passes after that hectic day, and the scene now shifts back to the school, right in front of the classroom sign. For Class 2B, Rika surfaces, looking extremely radiant, and celebrates out loud the fact that the dreadful midterms have finally drawn to a close. She happily celebrates that she scored a much better grade than usual, and Yusung congratulates her, saying it was entirely the fruit of her hard work. Rika then suggests they all celebrate finishing the exams by heading over together to a karaoke box, and one of their classmates instantly agrees with the idea. While the girl promises to foot the bill for the karaoke round for everyone, the classmate beside her looks totally depressed for bombing the tests, shifting topics. The classmate alerts Yusung about new malicious rumors that people have been spreading about him recently across the school. He shares that the new rumor claims the prota soloed around 20 dangerous members of the Russian mafia right in the middle of the street. The classmate finds amusement in the story, saying it sounds like something straight out of a movie, completely unawares that Yusung actually got wrapped up in something similar in Akihabara out of nowhere. Sasha pops up right behind Yusung with a playful smirk on her face, asking if that story is truly just a silly rumor. Right after, the Russian girl strikes a dramatic and animated pose, saying she is ready to hit the karaoke and showcase her beautiful voice to the world. Sasha goes right ahead picking out her favorite song, and the group decides it is time to cut the chatter and start moving toward the venue. The scene shifts directly to the bustling area of Shibuya, where the group of friends arrives under a clear and highly sunny sky. The girls walk along highly excited and bouncy through the busy streets, anxious to sing their hearts out and thoroughly enjoy the outing. Suddenly, their classmate notices the time and asks the others if they aren't hungry yet, and Rika agrees that it is well past lunchtime. He suggests they check out a gourmet burger joint nearby, but they are cut off by the loud roar of an engine approaching. A motorcycle comes flying in at high speed and zips right past Rika, causing the girl to let out a startled scream and nearly crash onto the pavement. The reckless biker even yells back, cursing at the girl, while their friend tries to protest against his extremely reckless behavior. Yusung rushes over to see if his friend is okay, but she notices in a panic that her wallet is gone and that the biker must have snatched it from her bag. With a serious face, the prota hands his backpack over to the girl and calmly tells her to wait right there while he handles the situation. Without wasting another single split second, Yusung takes off in an impressive sprint right after the fleeing criminal on the bike. Rika stands completely shell-shocked and frantically screams out her friend's name, seeing him bolt off in such a sudden and rapid manner. He yells back, ordering the girls to step into the store for now, guaranteeing he will manage to recover the stolen wallet no matter what. Down a side street, the mugger celebrates out loud with his partner over the easy score they just pulled off. He looks highly impressed by the massive amount of cash the student was packing in her wallet, while his partner displays a bit of worry. Out of nowhere, a deafening sound of sprinting footsteps begins to echo through the alley, leaving the partner completely terrified as he points off to the side. The biker panics, seeing Yusung sprinting toward them with a terrifying fury, while the youth demands he hand over the wallet this instant. In total desperation, the criminal tries to rev his motorcycle to the absolute max to manage to escape that bizarre and terrifying figure. He mocks him, saying it would be impossible for a human on foot to catch up to a speeding bike, totally unawares that the prota is glued right behind him. In the blink of an eye, Yusung catches up to the vehicle with ease and snatches the biker by the collar of his jacket, throwing the guy into absolute panic. With his eyes glowing in a menacing shade, the youth orders the thief to hand over the object right now, looking like a literal furious monster. He squeezes the motorcycle's rear frame with such sheer raw strength that the metal and plastic structure begins to crumble and crack right then and there. The prota manages to halt the moving bike using nothing but one hand, leaving the mugger paralyzed with terror at that display of raw power. Totally terrified and crying from desperation, the criminal begins begging for his life and repeatedly begs for forgiveness for what he just did. With an extremely dark and cold expression, Yusung short orders him to step off the motorcycle immediately, and the man obeys on the spot. The thief drops to his knees in humiliating fashion on the ground and hands Rika's pink wallet straight into the prota's hands with outstretched arms. He hops on his bike and flees the scene as fast as humanly possible, while the youth yells out one final warning telling him to never dare commit crimes like that again. Already calmer, Yusung pockets the recovered wallet and lets out a light grumble, annoyed to have had to go through all that stress for nothing. He feels extremely happy to manage to recover Rika's wallet, safe and sound after all that sprinting. The youth notices his friend's excited smile as she announces it is karaoke time, remembering she had promised to cover all the costs. While walking along thoroughly satisfied, the prota has absolutely zero clue that he is being closely monitored by a muscular man. The mysterious individual in a dark jacket and serious expression keeps tracking every single step Yusung takes in total silence. The day draws to a close, and the sky takes on an orange hue as the group happily says their goodbyes after having a total blast. Yusung walks back home satisfied, thinking about how good the day was and anxious to see his friends back at school. He plans to head straight to his home gym to train heavy, but his thoughts are cut off by someone addressing him as boss. The youth stops and looks back highly confused upon hearing that loud voice begging for him to wait just a moment. He comes face to face with the mysterious man sporting a pompadour hairstyle, who dramatically yells saying he has something highly important to say. Yusung breaks into an awkward smile and straight up asks who he is, totally failing to grasp the reason for all that commotion. Without saying a word, the man charges toward the prota and throws himself down to his knees on the pavement with a heavy impact. He loudly begs for Yusung to take him on as his disciple, leaving the youth completely shell-shocked and speechless. The onlookers nearby start gossiping about the bizarre scene, causing Yusung to angrily yell, asking who on earth he actually is. The guy clings to the prota's clothes and formally introduces himself as Goto Kazuya. While Yusung desperately begs him to get up, Kazuya says he can just call him Katsu, but Yusung begs him to stop causing such a massive scene right in the middle of the street. Trying to better understand that entire bizarre scenario, the prota decides to ask how old the guy actually is. Kazuya proudly answers that he is only 17 years old, making Yu-sung wonder how on earth someone that young manages to look that old. The big guy then reveals that he is none other than the leader of a notorious and feared local biker gang. He sheepishly confesses that the thieves who snatched the wallet earlier were from his gang, and Yu-sung wonders why on earth he tracked him down. Kazuya explains he followed him because he saw in him the true definition of a real man, leaving the prota even more confused. He begins to share about his past, revealing that despite always possessing a massive build, his personality was incredibly timid. Due to his shyness, Kazuya ended up suffering a ton of bullying from other boys both inside and outside of school. He reveals he suffered deeply from that and started thinking that if he got genuinely powerful, things would turn around for the better. Kazuya believed that if he achieved true power, nobody else in the world would ever dare look down on him with contempt again. Because of that, he started acting like a tough rebel to try to match his behavior to his intimidating looks. In the end, he became a gang leader just to look tough, but deep down, he remained the same coward pretending to be someone else. He deeply regrets that someone like him, who suffered from being weak, ended up joining forces with people who also mistreat others. Kazuya highlights that his gang relies heavily on bikes, but mentions he was mesmerized to see Yu-sung manage to catch up to one while sprinting on foot. He keeps pouring on the praise for the youth, saying he didn't use all that absurd strength just to flex in front of the crowd. Kazuya gets choked up remembering that Yu-sung used his incredible power with the sole purpose of protecting a friend who was in a tight spot. He asserts that that right there is what it means to be a real man, while the prota thinks in silence that he just wanted to hit the karaoke for free. The big guy begs once more to be accepted as a disciple, but Yu-sung declines, saying he has nothing to teach, and isn't that type of person. Yu-sung holds his head, at a loss for what to do to shake the guy off, lamenting his bizarre luck of constantly attracting weirdos. Suddenly, a brilliant idea strikes the prota's mind as the absolute perfect solution to resolve that major problem. Yu-sung crosses his arms and says he accepts the guy as his disciple, leaving Kazuya extremely surprised and happy with the response. However, the youth warns right on the spot that there is a highly important condition for that to actually happen. He makes a hand gesture indicating that Kazuya will need to clear a rigorous test with the exact duration of 3 days. Yu-sung explains the big guy must tag along and try to hang tough through his entire daily routine of heavy physical training. If he manages to survive those 3 days without quitting, Yu-sung promises he will finally officially accept him as his disciple. The big guy gets a bit tense facing the challenge. Completely unawares of the secret plans running through the prota's head, Yu-sung breaks into a malicious grin, planning to put Kazuya through a literal training hell so that he quits immediately and never bugs him again.